See you in an hour. Really? An hour? Thank God you said something. He knows that. He knew that. Is Renee coming? Renee? Thanks for nothing. Wow. You are gonna. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Waukesha Town Board or joint public hearing with the Town Board and Plan Commission, February 9th, 2017, beginning at 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Chairman Merrick,
Present.
Supervisor Brian Fisher,
Here.
Mike Durr,
Here.
Jim Radke,
Here.
Larry Wolf,
Here.
Commissioners Robert Flanagan,
Here.
Bob Stigler,
Here.
Alan White,
Here.
and Renee Ramirez.
Here.
Ken Miller is absent.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, have we met the opens meeting law?
Yes, we have.
And we can begin with opening the public hearing. Hearing number one, notice is hereby giving that a joint public hearing involving the Town of Waukesha Plan Commission and the Town of Waukesha Board shall be held Thursday, February 9, 2017, beginning at 6 p.m. at the Waukesha Town Hall
located at West 250 South 3567 Center Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin, to hear a proposed unspecified conditional use request for an event venue. The petitioner is Ken Miller, located at South 47 West 23125 Lonsdale Road and South 47 23045 Lonsdale Road. Tax keys are WAKT 1397999 and WAKT 1397999-001. All interested parties will be given an opportunity to be heard, and we could begin with Mr. Miller if you have a presentation. We could start either way with Mr. Rybarczyk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you tonight is Mr. Miller for Lilac Acres Farms LLC. The property currently is a total of 50 acres. It is zoned a combination of R1 Single Family Residence District and C1 Conservancy District. Future land use plan for it shows as low density residential and environmental corridor. The petitioner is wishing to operate an event venue on the subject property. The event venue would include the adaptive reuse of an existing farm structures on the subject property, as well as the construction of new farm structures. The proposed use is not specifically identified as a permitted or conditional use within the town of Waukesha zoning districts. Therefore, will be reviewed as an unspecified conditional use. On December 8th of last year, the Town Plan Commission and Board discussed the potential use and made a determination for an unspecified conditional use for an event venue to be permitted in any zoning district subject to reasonable conditions. Just so that people in the audience are aware, back in December, both the Plan Commission and the Board looked at the unspecified conditional use for an event venue. They actually identified or defined the use and then came up with criteria to review applications. So at that time, it was defined that an event venue is a location, could be a premise, a lot, a building, and or structure, which is rented to third parties for events such as weddings, fundraisers, meetings and conferences, birthday celebrations, and or anniversaries. Food shall be prepared and served by a professional catering service. Beverages will be sold, served by the owner-operator of the event venue or a professional catering service. An event venue should not exceed 300 guests. Only one event may take place at one time, and the assembly of temporary tents, canvases, plastic, etc. is prohibited. And then the conditions or criteria that we put on the event venue in case others would come forward is that the location, the building, the site, and plan of operation shall all be submitted per our ordinances. So we have a full site plan of operation section of ordinance that talks about buildings, the aesthetics of the buildings, location of the buildings, landscaping, signage, stormwater management, etc. No such use shall be permitted on a lot less than 20 acres in area. No such use shall be allowed in any parcel except may front or abut directly upon an arterial or collector street, and the event venue access to the parcel shall be from the arterial or collector street. No such use shall be permitted unless served by 1, a private on-site waste system and a private on-site well, 2, a municipal sewer system and municipal water system, or 3, a combination of the private system and the municipal system. Next is that no building structure and or use shall be closer than 100 feet to the lot line of an adjoining lot in a district permitting a residential use. Off-street parking shall be provided in accordance with the off-street parking section of our ordinance. And then live and amplified music shall not exceed 75 decibels at the property line. Town of Waukesha Plan Commission and Board may prohibit music being piped, amplified, or permitted outside of a building and or structure if the noise level becomes an issue. And then the term event venue does not apply to private clubs, private commercial recreational facilities, theaters, dance halls, and other amusement places and restaurants. So that was the definition for an event venue and the criteria that was identified at the December 8th meeting, both by the Town Plan Commission and the Town Board. So with that, Mr. Miller has kind of followed those conditions, as I had mentioned right now, the 3 parcels total approximately 50 acres. He is only looking to use 20 of the 50 acres for this use. He would be coming forward at a later date with a certified survey map, reconfiguring the 50 acres into a 20-acre parcel and then a 30-acre parcel. The applicant will also be coming forward at a later date for the site plan of operation. At that time, he'll have full engineering of the site, grading, erosion control, stormwater management, additional details on the building itself and floor plan. Tonight, he's just asking for approval of the conditional use to make sure that the town and its residents are comfortable with the use. He realizes that this is just part one of a multi approval process that he'll have to go through. His proposal is that the event venue includes a renovated and expanding barn, roughly 3,200 square feet with the maximum seating capacity of 200 people, 2,000 square feet of outdoor deck, kitchen facilities, bar with cocktail tables pending a liquor license approval by the town board. So this does not grant the approval of the liquor license. It just allows the operation to potentially have one. He will still have to come forward to the town board and request a liquor license and follow the requirements of the town board during that approval process. The kitchen facilities will be for catering preparation. There will be an outdoor amphitheater for wedding venues to be taking place outside. The south side of the property does overlook the conservancy, the environmental corridors and wetlands. So that's kind of where the amphitheater is located, is looking over those areas. We'll have restrooms and dressing rooms, parking lot for 120 vehicles. Currently, the proposed site plan also shows that there would likely be acceleration, deceleration lanes and bypass lanes that would need to be constructed on County Trunk Highway I. That will all be at the determination of Waukesha County because it is a county road. So Jason Mayer at the Highway Department, as Mr. Miller would be going through the approval process, he's going to have to show his drawings to the county, and the county will make that determination. With regard to planning comments based on the information that was shown, as I had mentioned, he will be using only 20 acres of the 50-acre parcel. In your packet, there is a very preliminary land division concept showing the division of the 20-acre lot from the 50-acre lot, keeping in mind that the lot was configured so that all of his buildings, both existing and proposed, would meet the 100-foot setback that was one of the conditions of the the event venue, one of the criteria that we created. With regard to the off-street parking, we did look at our ordinances. We don't specifically have a category that specifically talks about event venues. The closest that we have is auditoriums, churches, theaters, community centers, and other places of public assembly. That requires 1 space per 2 seats. In this case, his use would require 100 parking spaces. He's providing 120 parking spaces, including handicap. The additional 20 parking spaces would be for staff, et cetera. He is looking at doing some pest management practices with regard to the parking. One comment that staff had in working with Mr. Miller and his proposal that we would like to keep the area kind of in a rural aesthetic kind of character. So he is looking at doing more of a pervious pavement versus going through and asphalting or concreting the entire parking lot to kind of make it look more like a grass field or a farm field. So there are practices out there where you can actually put mesh grading into the grass that can hold the weight of cars and trucks, and then still allows the grass to cut through or grow through it. It also would help with any stormwater management on the site because you would still allow for on-site infiltration. So again, that's something that he will have to continue to work with staff, both from planning, engineering side, and also Waukesha County from county's erosion control and stormwater management perspectives. With regard to building height within the R1 zoning district, the heights of the building are in compliance with the building height. With regard to the setbacks, as I had mentioned in the unspecified conditional use, we have put a minimum setback of 100 feet. This is greater than typical setback in the R1 zoning district. Currently, the nearest structure, existing structure, is 170 feet from the lot line. That's the existing farmstead. The main building that would be built, the new construction, would be 220 feet from the east lot line. With regard to the conceptual plans in your packet, he has provided a site plan. He's provided some architectural drawings of the building, as well as some interior drawings of the venue. He's still going to have to go through and submit for a site plan of operation. That is going to require the full gamut of requirements per that ordinance. So we will be seeing more detailed drawings on the site plan, more detailed drawings of the architecture, grading plans, stormwater erosion control. Again, what the applicant is looking for tonight is approval of the conditional use, understanding that he would still have to submit all these other materials, but he's kind of getting a feel for the town tonight, whether they're for his proposal. So with that, kind of go through the information that was submitted for the general public. He did submit a full plan of operation for his business. I can go back to the staff report and maybe go over some of that quickly. So he's looking at hours of operation would be Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to midnight. And then Sunday through Thursday would be 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Again, he's looking at a total of 200 guests that would be attending. All the food would be prepared by a professional catering service. And they are, as the owners of the venue, looking to hold the alcohol license. So it wouldn't necessarily be to a caterer or anybody renting the venue that would get the alcohol license. It would be the owner themselves. So they're going to be responsible for the selling of the beverages, serving of the beverages, and also enforcement of the alcohol as well. This shows roughly, and it may be a little difficult up on the screen, but at the top here we have Lonsdale Road, where my cursor is. This would be the entrance of the development, the current access to the house. Existing farmstead and some of the outbuildings are located here. This is the current east property line of the property. The new facility would be built here, and then the amphitheater would be out in the back here. This is more of a detail of the proposal. Make sure I have it. So again, the existing farmhouse, Lonsdale Road, would be off here off the map. Existing farmhouse, existing barn that's in the back here. This would be the new facility that's being built, the new barn. Here is the amphitheater here. So this is, trying to get my directions correct. This would be north, so this would be the east side of the property, and then the Conservancy stream is off the back. This here is a floor plan of the new building that would be built, kind of showing the spaces, storage areas. This would show it with how the tables could be arranged. The main area for the wedding. We have the restrooms that are over here, and then the food preparation area is here, and then this would kind of be the bar area. These are some of the renderings of the new facility that would be built, keeping with kind of the rural agricultural style and character of the area. This would be the back overlooking the conservancy with the wraparound deck. It's kind of the back area. If you're back by the amphitheater, looking back at the area. So looking at the property, these are the 3 lots encompassing, kind of comes down through here into the conservancy. What the petitioner is looking at doing is taking this area right in here, in between the 2 houses. This would be the 20 acres that would have the wedding facility on it in this area here. The rest of the 30 acres would be left as is in its current state. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you in the Plan Commission for any questions.
Thank you, Planner Ray Barczyk. Any questions for Planner Ray Barczyk at this point before Mr. Miller has an opportunity to present? Seeing none, Mr. Miller?
Good evening. My name is Ken Miller. I live at.
Let's use the microphone up front.
230 South 46452.
Milky Way Road. Like this? You get the address? West 230, South 4645, Milky Way Road. Our family purchased this around September of last year and subsequently have met with the town attorney and the planner and several of you throughout the process of getting to this point. We have with us tonight the architect, R.G. Keller, as well as our engineer, Tony Zanin, and myself, the owner, as well as my daughter and son-in-law that'll be the operator, basically, of the facility. Rather than stand up here and listen to myself talk, I think it would behoove us to let the people talk and we can answer their questions after they're through, if that works for everybody. Mr. Chairman?
Off on that, there are some guidelines that the town of Waukesha ordinance has regarding back and forth questioning and answering. So I'll let the attorney address that as soon as he gets back up here.
No, I didn't mean banter.
Well, he wanted to have a back and forth question and answer.
No, actually, that wasn't what I meant. I meant let them ask their questions, and after they're done
After
completely.
they're done, that's fine. Counselor? So Mr. Miller's done with his presentation?
There really is, there's nothing I can add to it that Jamie hasn't done really.
Okay, we have a lot of people here tonight, and we thank you for coming. But we had to make sure we have order and make sure everybody's given an opportunity to speak. So the chairman's asked that I just lay out for you some of the ground rules that we use and almost all of the communities that I represent use. We don't have people yelling out, obviously. We'd ask that you continue as you have. You've all been very polite and you've kept the noise down so that you could hear the planner's report, and you'll be able to hear everybody's comments if we keep that practice. We ask that all people who are going to speak come up to the microphone. The first time they talk, please give your name and address. If you speak after that, you only have to give your name. And then as a courtesy, we ask that you let everybody speak one time before you come back to speak again. You only address the board. You're not going to get in a back and forth with the petitioner or with other residents or other people. This is an opportunity for you to make your comments and to get your questions raised, but you do that by going directly to the board. The questions, when you ask them, Mr. Rabarczyk and I will be writing them down. You don't ask a question and get an answer, ask a question and get an answer. We have found that that does not work. So you get up, you make your entire statement, you ask all your questions, then you have a seat. When we get 5 or 10 questions, then we take a short break from the public comments, and then Mr. Rabarczyk or I or the petitioner will answer the questions, and then we'll go back and we'll continue to follow that procedure until everybody's had an opportunity to make their comments or get their questions answered. I think, Mr. Chairman, that's pretty much the basic format that we've used successfully for many years. And so at this time, we would open it up to the public. Please step forward. The other thing that does save a little time, if people still can see, is if you want to line up in a row or something, then, then people know, because it's a little awkward, people getting up and down and not knowing when they can speak or not speak. So I don't know if there's a spokesperson for the group or whether there's someone who wishes to, somebody's got to go first. So is someone prepared?
I'm prepared.
Very good. And if people want to line up somehow or maybe be on deck over here, if not in line down the middle of the thing. Okay, sir, are you going to be next?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to line up behind that gentleman and deck. Always let's have one person in waiting at least so that we can keep it moving. You've been great. Thank you for your cooperation, everyone.
Evening.
Hello, my name is Ed Grosh. I live at S47W22967 Lonsdale Road, which is the 10-acre property immediately to the east of the property in question tonight. Okay, so I'm speaking on behalf of my wife as well as myself. We are probably the closest neighbors and the ones most strongly affected by this development. We've talked with Ken twice about this. He came to us right away at the beginning. He came to us again. He's been upfront about absolutely everything. We've seen his plans, discussed them with him, made suggestions and comments, and have every confidence that he will look at doing the best job he can for the other people that might be affected by this. We feel that this is something that's unique to the area, and it obviously has some questions that will be addressed tonight, but would like to remind people that it was just a few years ago and there was another question about a Buddhist temple, and a lot of people were concerned about that. Well, we live just down the street from the Buddhist temple. Things have been resolved and work out reasonably well. That was different. People are frightened of things that are different. This is different too. I don't think we have any other wedding venues in the neighborhood or in the town, perhaps. There will be issues, there will be problems. I think Ken will address them. He's a professional. He's been developing properties across the town and the county for decades. We have every confidence in his ability to deal with these things and address them as they come up. I don't think I have a whole lot of other things to say. I don't have a whole lot of questions. I have a lot of confidence in Ken's ability to deal with the issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Ken Nowak. I live at South 50 West 23525 Woodchuck Lane, which is in the backside of Mill Creek Estates. A couple questions I have for the Plan Commission and the Town Board is if they looked at the master zoning plan and if this complies with the master zoning plan. I believe this is still in effect. It was adopted in 2009. And this use would be in conflict with the master zoning plan. And I have the section here. Let's see here, Chapter 5 on land use, page 28 at the bottom. It refers to conditional use permits in rural areas. And it says the board can approve conditional use permits in rural areas, but they have to determine that this use is compatible with the adjacent residential areas. And in my mind, and I think a lot of other people's mind, that a banquet hall or dance hall, whatever you want to call it, is not compatible with a residential setting. I believe something compatible would be maybe a home occupancy where they might have a residence and maybe a small office connected. That would be a conditional use in a residential area. I believe this use might be needed in the town of Waukesha, but the location is not the right location. Usually these type of developments are usually in a business district, maybe a B1, B2, or a B3 district. So I would hope that the Plan Commission would take a look at their smart growth plan, and take another look at it and make sure to see how it's compatible with that use. Another question I have would be for the Millers. Maybe the town already looked into this. In the report, under section 5, it says that the benefits to the town would be a potential increase in surrounding property values. So they're contending that the property values are going to go up in the area. And I talked to the town assessor yesterday, and I asked him if the town board or the plan commission has contacted him to do any surveys or reports, and he said no, they have not. So I just don't understand where the increase in property values is coming from. I don't know what their what their material or information that they're getting that the property values are going to increase. The town assessor kind of pointed to me, usually when you have a business like this and it moves in next to a residential area, property values usually decrease because it doesn't fit that zoning. So that's another one. And then I'd also like the plan commission to look at its own zoning code, section 1329, and it has to do with conditional uses. On the bottom of the page, it would be D, basis of approval for conditional uses. And it says it cannot be, one of the conditions is it cannot cause a substantial effect on property values. So the board has to use that standard and take a look at that and see how the property values would be affected. And if it decreases the property value according to the town's own zoning code, it could not be approved. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bonnie Camp, and I'm speaking for myself and my husband. We live at South 46, West 22638 Weber Court. So our property is less than a half mile from the land in question. For those who don't know our side of town, it means we're between Milky Way and Guthrie Road on the north-hand side of the road. One of the comments that was used at the very beginning was being comfortable with the use of the land. I'm not at all comfortable with this proposal for several reasons. I'm not coming from a zoning perspective, and I don't have any questions for you. I'm just going to tell you what I think. We have a sense of neighborhood over there, but Highway I is very fast. The speed limit is 45 miles an hour. Trying to turn out of Weber Drive onto Highway I, either going left or right, is a challenge because we have a gully right across the way from us, and my car almost tipped into it on a snowy day, a snowy night when I was coming home from work one night. I have concern for our neighbors and I'm a retired nurse, so I always have concern for people. We have neighbors with horses, and you're proposing having 200 cars coming and going potentially 7 days a week. You have the proposal for a liquor license with people leaving that property at 11, 12 o'clock at night. That has nothing to do with decibel levels in my mind. It has to do with safety for the people that are out there, for those that are leaving and for those that live there. We have a dog, and I've tried to walk him along Lonsdale Road during the day, and it's not safe. And my dog is more interested in the grass than the cars, but I don't feel safe on that road because the traffic is too fast. So I'm not comfortable with the whole concept of having a business there in a residential neighborhood with large parking space, Let's not even talk about the use of water. Our water resources are limited anyway, for those of us that try to conserve by buying smaller use washing machines and all that. I'm just totally not comfortable with this proposal at all. It might be a beautiful place for a bed and breakfast. Not as much traffic, but it would give somebody a sense of living in the country. But for those of us that live there now, it would be taking it away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ron Ball. My address is S48W23641 Merlin Lane. I have several concerns. I'll try to get through them quickly. First, the maximum number of guests. Jamie, you mentioned early in your presentation it was 300. The business plan of operation revision 2 dated December 12, 2016, and what was shown on the screen states 200. So I want to be sure that the maximum number is stated as either 200 or 300. One of my concerns is a fully licensed bar in a separate room with bar stools and cocktail tables. Now, what causes this not to be used as a tavern other than the events that are shown here? If me and my buddy and I, want to come in and have a drink and there's someone called a bartender there, can we come in at 8 o'clock on a Friday night? It's open 7 days a week, potentially every day, every night. So if this is approved, and I strongly suspect it's going to be, I would ask that you put some very strong wording in this document that does not allow this to be turned into a tavern type establishment, that the drinking can only be used as the events. And second, and I think this is the most important point, it sort of echoes the lady that preceded me, and that is safety. For those of us that are in that area, and I guess everyone here basically is, if you know the intersection that is at Lonsdale or Highway I and Big Bend, this is a very dangerous intersection, even today. For people traveling west on Lonsdale, when they top that hill just short of that stop sign, I have frequently seen people run through that. You cannot see that stop sign until you're almost on top of it. Now, if we add 200 strangers, alcohol, darkness, I can almost guarantee you that there'll be an accident at that intersection in short order. Now, if we go east past Guthrie, this is a very narrow, dark, winding road. Same situation. Strangers, alcohol, darkness, potentially an accident. Next point is sound. I really don't know how a band or a DJ can be limited to 75 dB at 200 feet, which is basically the property line. I think it's 220. The business plan has stated that is slightly higher than a normal conversation or basically a phone, a tone. Well, even if it could be, why would I want to be in my deck or at my deck or out in my yard having some noise that's equivalent to someone talking or a phone dial tone right next to me, potentially 7 days a week, all day, all night? That would not be very pleasant. And again, echoing something that was said before, benefits. The statement is potentially increase in property value. I don't think that could be true at all, except in the case of that farmland being turned into business purposes. Certainly that would increase the value, but for any residential area or houses, no way it can be an increase. And enhanced rural, I'm quoting from the business plan, enhanced rural architectural beauty or attractive asset to the community. Now, if we had a show of hands here and I ask how many people think that 100 cars or more parked in a grassy field would be an attractive site, I don't think we'd get very many votes, and that's what it's really going to be. So it's not attractive. It's not enhancing anything there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Al Collins, Partridge Lane. And we moved out
Excuse
here
me, sir, your last name for the clerk?
to get away from things like this.
Sir, your last name for the clerk, I'm sorry.
South 51 West 23072,
And was it Collins?
Collins, yeah. The zoning was residential, and that's what drew us to the area. And this is a commercial enterprise. And we don't understand how this can be altered and changed after we move out here. It almost seems like it should be put on a referendum. We have no police force in the town of Waukesha. We have to rely on the sheriff. And if you've tried to call them and if you had a complaint, they're undermanned, they're understaffed. They don't get there, and it's not their fault. You're going to have people are going through the stop signs now on Lonsdale. Every day I see it, just breeze right through them. And now we're going to have people who are under the influence of alcohol at midnight. Those roads are very narrow. You can hardly pass each other. And now we're going to have big semis and big trucks there. There's a lot of kids in the area. And now we're going to change the parking regulations to accommodate this property. The home values are definitely going to go down. I'm a real estate broker. The environmental studies we haven't seen. Now there's going to be a on-site waste management program. What is that going to entail? The water table we've already talked about. Is there going to be a security force there in case there are problems? The noise factor. The noise carries out there where we live for a long ways. The decibel level doesn't matter. You can hear it. And it's just a matter of time before the bands move outside. Next year at this time, we'll be here because they're going to want to expand or do something else and make another endeavor that we'll have to vote on again. So all we're asking is for you to vote on this as though it was in your backyard. I don't know how many people here live close by, but it's definitely going to affect the quality of life. It's a great plan. It can be put many, many other places where it's commercial. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Wegenfelder, South 48 West 23375 Merlin Lane. And I would just like to speak out in opposition to this as well for the number of reasons that have already been given. Safety is the number one concern in this. There's going to be a lot of traffic, and people have already expressed the road conditions that we're dealing with here in this narrow road. Also, this is a commercial business being put into a residential area. This is not supposed to be put into these residential areas. Also, I'd like to address or have the group address the sound issue, because if there's going to be bands playing till midnight, there's going to be a lot of people making noise and the music causing a lot of noise in that area. So the biggest concern I have is this going to decrease the quality of our life in that area. And I like to just reflect back on the motto for the town of Waukesha as a great place to live. If we allow these commercial entities to start coming into our residential areas, the town is not going to be a great place to live.
Thank you.
My name is Peter Anello. My address is W233S4940 Woodchuck Lane. I am quite immediately adjacent to the property that Mr. Miller would like to have you consider for a significant change. Before I voice a few of my concerns and maybe a comment or two, I'd like to tell everyone here that I've never been in front of a board like this, appealing to your sense of what's right for the community. today's my chance. I'd also like to thank everyone for your time, your commitment to our community. Living in the area, I often see Mr. Miller walking on Milky Way. I often see him in his farms. I want to let everyone know here, the people behind me and you board, that he is a very hardworking man. I also know that he's also been very successful with a lot of his commercial enterprises. This is not the place for a commercial enterprise. There's people behind me that have raised their kids or are currently raising their kids that have enjoyed family times in our backyards with no noise, with no light. And that's not going to happen with 200 or 300 people on Friday and Saturday nights, or those quiet late fall Sunday afternoons. It can't happen. For 25 years, I've walked some of those areas. Yeah, I'll admit, I guess I've trespassed a little bit. Gone out there with my kids when they were, this tall, taking the neighbors' kids, sometimes 2, 3 dads, the moms, and we just walked for a couple of hours. And along the way, you see some litter. Take that walk this time next year, there's going to be a lot more litter. That's County Conservancy back there. So, the question is, how is that going to remain the same for the next generation? Pardon me, I just want to gather my thoughts here, make sure that I refer to all the things that I wanted to while I had my opportunity here. I agree with everything, most of everything that I've heard so far regarding the other important things here. Safety and property values. There's a retail establishment. Most likely everyone in here knows which but I'm not going to mention. And it's a bar. And it's been in business a long time. And I've known the owner for 7 or 8 years. About a year ago, he hired a new bartender who was recently discharged for selling heroin across that bar. Those things happen in those public places. This is not a reflection at all of Mr. Miller or anyone in this room. But when you got 200 people coming and going in an area that we don't know who these people are, and everybody tries the best they can when they make hiring decisions, but sooner or later, with those types of positions, you run into those kinds of troubles and situations which are not good for this community. So I'm strongly against the change and would not want to see this in my backyard. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
My name's Richard James. I live at W234 S4835 Mill Creek Trail. I vehemently oppose this proposal, and what I'm hearing is even a little more shocking than what I read before, and that is the number of people have increased, the setback has been decreased. All my neighbors that spoke before, I think, hit on every point. As Peter just said, safety, the noise, the quality of life. One thing I noted about the mission statement is that it's going to create an unforgettable experience and create memories for your guests, for cherished and your cherished generations, for generations to come. Well, our memories go back to 1988 when I moved here from Pennsylvania. I particularly chose this neighborhood because of its beauty, its urban setting,
And we understood that there was surrounding property that might be developed someday. But it was also understood and zoned accordingly that this would be similar type of single-family homes as we have in Mill Creek Estates. Well, the unforgettable memories that they may create for non-town residents are going to diminish the memories of my two children that were raised there and have since moved away. But there's quite a few young families that have moved in, and they no doubt love the urban setting, the safety that our neighborhood affords, and the fact that we are up against a conservancy that we know is not going to go away. I would ask what has been asked earlier, what kind of environmental impact study has been done on this with a very pristine piece of property, which is the conservancy of Mill Creek? And will that environmental impact study include the environmental impact on the families in Mill Creek Estate and their memories that they create on summer evenings sitting out on their deck, when now we, 7 days a week, will be treated to countless number of semi-talented or low-talented bands? It's not a point, man. On the increased benefits or the benefits in total, a serious cost benefit analysis would clearly state that these benefits are not there. The increased property values is foolhardy to think that's going to happen. I picture should this go through, I picture a realtor down the road in a few years taking a potential buyer into our neighborhood and say, this is a beautiful place to live. Plus you get to live right next to a party house that runs 7 days a week. I don't think that's going to be a big selling point. I'd like to second everything that's been said earlier. I think it's covered it very well. I think Ken Nowak has listed some very serious considerations in terms of zoning violations, and I would hope the board would look at the interests of the residents of this town and not change that plaque to say a great place to live, but to a great place to party. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Abrahamson. I live at South 49 W23330 Mill Creek Trail. I'm neighbor of all the previous speakers. We are in the neighborhood directly to the west of where this proposal is taking place. And I want to just echo everything with the safety that everybody has said. The increase in traffic will be a dangerous thing for that area. It's already people speeding through stop signs that aren't familiar. And at night, it's only going to be worse. I also want to comment on how this can possibly enhance the area. It can't. Number one, the area is zoned residential. What's the highest and best use for a residential property? It is residential. If you change it to something differently, it's not going to be of any benefit to the area. The property is a beautiful property. It would fit numerous other more, I guess you could say the word, attractive options that would be a better fit for that property. We've got so many people in the area. The noise factor, Mr. Merrick, you live in the neighborhood right over the hill from us. When you have your block parties in the summer, I can hear the bands on my patio at night. Okay. Now I'm so much closer.
Excuse me, sir. I've never had a block party.
Well, you have not, but your neighborhood has.
Perhaps.
Whispering Hills. Yes, that's what I just mean. Okay. That's where the sound's coming from. So I realize you didn't have the party, but I'm just saying that's easily a mile from my property. And I hear the bands when they have those summer parties outside. And if they have these bands even inside and there's doors and windows open, that sound's going to be coming out It's very quiet out there, as other people have mentioned, and that sound will be carrying to the south to the Mill Creek down there, to our neighborhood, the first Mill Creek, to your neighborhood, Whispering Hills, and to the whole immediate area. The quality of life will decline, the noise will be bad, the traffic will be bad. You cannot enhance a community with increased noise and traffic and commercial establishments in a rural, single-family area. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take some of the questions if you wait just a second. All right, do you mind? And did you write them down, or you want me to read through them, or you want to start? Or? Well, we only want very specific questions. We don't deal with rhetorical questions.
So in looking through my comments, we had, what I heard was talking about zoning and land use plan. I heard comments about.
Yes, answer that one. Let's just start with that.
mic, please.
There was a question about looking at the master zoning plan, then referred to as the comp plan or the master plan. They're all synonymous. And in your report, did you deal with that issue?
So we had looked at that back at the meeting on December 8th of last year, where the Plan Commission and the board looked at both the land use plan and the existing zoning. It was at that time that they made the policy decision to look at this as an unspecified conditional use. And that's where we had come up with those criteria that I had mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. The Town Plan Commission and board at that time decided that it was applicable in all zoning districts within the town, as long as those criteria were met. So through that decision, they made the opinion that it was allowable in all of the zoning districts. However, it still has to go through this process, the conditional use process, and it also has to go through the site plan of operation process. So with regard to the comments on compatibility, that's the determination of these bodies to make that decision once a request is received. So from my standpoint, it was discussed both by the Plan Commission and the board on December 8th, and they made the determination that it could be compatible in a residential district subject to the criteria.
The next question I saw was number of cars. What is the
No, the next question was for Mr.
Yeah.
Miller. He wanted them to explain in your application, you talked about benefits of property values, and they wanted further explanation of that. So you'd have to respond to your petition. You made some reference to how it would benefit property value. So come back to the microphone if you want to explain that. That was the next question. Mr. Chairman.
I'm not sure that I would agree that it's going to increase their values. It certainly wouldn't decrease. I don't think it's going to have any effect on it.
Well, what did you say in your application? Wait,
No, please
I'll-
don't.
if you start this, it'll
Don't.
go nowhere.
Sir,
And I will clarify that. If you give me a moment, your patience has been good all night. We don't want to start now. Thank you. They specifically reference the questioner, an answer you gave on your application about benefits to the community. He said, section 5, benefits to the town, property values, and he wanted you to expand upon where you felt that this would be increase in property values. That doesn't necessarily, do we have the question, Mr. Robarczyk, that they're responding, that they're asking about, to be fair to Mr. Miller? We're going to ask the specific question, sir. It was a very specific question to ask him if he could expound upon his answer in his application about property values.
Sorry, it's on the screen. It was part of the plan of operation that was submitted.
Can you read it for us, or somebody?
Sure. So it says number 5, town benefits. First bullet point, increased tax revenue. Second bullet point, potential increase in surrounding property values. Third is enhanced rural architectural beauty. Fourth, a new attractive asset to the community. And 5 was ability for non-town residents to experience a wonderful event and to get to know Waukesha.
So in some respects, it was a rhetorical question, but it was very specific,
understand.
and you should be given an opportunity to expound or explain it. That's all they ask.
Let's do the bullet points one at a time. The increased tax revenue is fairly obvious. I think the taxes now are around 4,000. I can't tell you what they'll be, but I'm sure they'll hover near 10,000. The thing that people don't realize is how little of that money actually comes to the town. So, I mean, we're only talking about hundreds of dollars, I would think, overall. Number two, I'm not sure I can actually back up the next one, potential increase in surrounding property value. I can only tell you this, that the person with the most skin in the game is us. We live within 800 feet of the road, Highway I. We live right across the street. And if anybody's property value is going to go down, it'll be me along with the rest of them. I can't say they're going to go up, and I don't know what would increase it, honestly. Probably shouldn't have been on there. Increased rural architectural beauty. I would think the plan speaks for itself. We don't build junk. My house is right across the street again. That's an opinion, I guess. A new attractive asset to the community kind of goes back to number 3. I guess if you don't like the architecture, you're not going to think it's enhancing the beauty. I happen to think it's nice. I designed it. I'm probably a little biased. Ability for non-town residents to experience a wonderful event and get to know, I think it says the town, which is obvious. I mean, there's going to be people coming here from out of state. They'll come from all over the country, possibly. I have no idea where they're going to come from, you know, and so it would obviously increase their thoughts on the township in general, I guess.
Okay, thank you for that answer. The next question that I had was, could you clarify the number of guests, the 300 versus 200 number?
I can. It's simple. You, as a body, said that this type of venue could have as many as 300 people. We, as a petitioner, are limiting it to 200.
Next question was, and Chairman or anybody, if I skip one, if I missed one in between, just yell out. How are you going to keep this from you being used as a bar?
Well, again, it's the restrictions that you imposed as a body back in December. It can't be used as a bar. It can't be, people cannot bring liquor or alcohol or any type of thing into the venue. It has to be served at the venue, so taxes are paid to the people that the alcohol is purchased from. I'm not sure exactly how it was restricted. Maybe you could read the language.
The planner, wasn't there a line that people could only be there for the events? In the event venue, or was that in your?
Right, so no, the definition is that which is rented to a third party for events, and they're only weddings, fundraisers, meetings and conferences, birthday celebrations, and or anniversaries. Those are the only permitted uses that would be allowed on the property.
The next question that I had is, what is the plan for the septic? And I apologize to the maker of that question. You used the specific verbiage. I shortcut that, but I think I captured it. It's, you asked, how are you going to do the septic?
We tested it in December. I thought at first it was either going to be a mound system. I was prepared for a mound system. When we were finished testing in the main field behind the building to the south, I said, years ago, I had heard that there was a gravel pit here. I said, why don't you humor me? I knew the guy that was doing the testing for the last 20 years. I said, let's dig some additional holes. So we did, and it actually turns out that there was a gravel pit in the back, and we don't need to have a mound system. We can actually have an in-ground system, the same as what was used 20, 30 years ago. That's only one point. I don't think the septic system is going to bother anybody because it should function as a normal septic system. And if it doesn't, we'll have to change it and put it to a mound or go to a holding tank, which we were prepared. We were actually more prepared to do a holding tank than anything. The well has already been there for years. We intend to use the same one if we can. We're going to use waterless urinals, which cuts back on the water usage as well as the need in the septic system.
How would it differ from a conventional septic system in my house, for instance?
It's going to be equivalent to a 5-bedroom house. It wouldn't differ. It'll be exactly the same. The only difference is you probably have one in your backyard with about 80 feet of pipe leading to it. This will have 400 feet of pipe leading to it. So it's just further away. That's all.
I think you missed one question.
I'm not sure if I, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't know if I answered you adequately.
No, you did. One I had was how many cars?
100 cars.
100 cars.
100
That's your
cars.
maximum parking.
There's room for 120.
Okay.
Mr. Rubarsik, did I miss anything? The next one I have is there a security force? Are you planning to have a security force?
Actually, it's an option. The people will pay extra if they want that to be on the site. We aren't providing security with any kind of off-duty police officers or anything like that.
The next one was, there were sort of questions, and I want to give everybody their due. He asked about whether or why there was the number of people were increased. And I'm not quite sure, but that was sort of what but you've already clarified that.
200 people maximum.
And that's been the proposal all along. There's not been an increase or decrease.
Never.
And then he asked about the setbacks being decreased. I mean, I'm not sure what.
Actually, they're increased.
Under the current zoning district for residential district, front yard is 50 feet, side yard is 20 feet. In this case, under the unspecified conditional use, we had increased that to 100 feet for all structures from all property lines. So they've actually increased per the definition and criteria that the Plan Commission and board set.
Next question I have is, what environmental study has been done?
None.
And I'd like to elaborate on that. I have been in contact with Waukesha County, both Jason Fruth, the department head, and Amy Barrows. So has Tony Zanin. All of the Waukesha County shoreline and floodplain jurisdiction is south of all the proposed development. They have stated that they are not going to have any review of it because all of the proposed development is far enough north from the wetlands, the floodplains, the intermittent stream, and from the woodlands. So there will be no overseeing jurisdiction from the county from their planning and zoning standpoint.
Do you know how far approximately?
From the environmental corridor,
Yes.
probably 800 feet to the south. And there's another one in the wooded area that's across the street from the Buddhist temple. That's probably 350 feet. There's another one to the south of that. There's actually a ditch that crosses our property across the street that runs through this property and leads down to the creek. And that's probably 500 feet away.
I had a few more that
Just
I
before we leave that subject, if I can ask the planner a question. In his staff report, item number 10 specifies the conditional use shall not be in full force and effect until such time that the petitioner complies with the following. And A is, the petitioner shall obtain the necessary approvals and satisfy all comments, conditions, and concerns of the Waukesha County Department of Public Works. Going on to B, the petitioner shall obtain the necessary approvals to satisfy all comments, conditions, and concerns of the Waukesha County Department of Environmental Health. That's for the private. And then item C, item B was for the wastewater treatment. And then item C, the petitioner shall obtain the necessary approvals and satisfy all comments, conditions, and concerns of the town of Waukesha and the Waukesha County Department of Land Resources for erosion control and stormwater management. Is that addressed in the, how is that related to an EIS? Or is it at all? It would not be. The EIS would be more of a function of the Waukesha County Department of Planning and Zoning. And since they have reviewed their authority on this, the only approvals that are needed from Waukesha County per the county, and that's where these conditions came from, was from Public Works for access on County Highway Trunk I, from Environmental Health with regard to the septic and well, and then from Land Resources for erosion control and stormwater management. Okay, thank you.
We've accomplished everything with the county short of the septic permit. There'll be an acceleration lane, and a deceleration lane on the south side of I. That's the only thing that they required.
Not a passing lane on the
north
side?
No.
I had a few more questions or comments. One of the comments was there'd be an increase in semi-truck traffic.
It's impossible. You can't get a semi into the site other than when we would actually be building the building for building material. There's the loading dock, which was implied in different, whatever. It's not that part's, the loading dock is strictly for a 1-ton van for bringing food and or delivering alcohol and beer.
I think we had a comment about outside music or outside music venues or music
Yeah,
being piped
there is,
outside.
there, again, it was limited. When the unspecified use was decided in December, there'll be no outside bands, there'll be no outside piping of music from the inside. The main, and again, I can't express this enough, that I probably have the biggest concern about this noise as well as everybody else. I don't want to hear this thing. And I'm going to make sure that I don't hear it. And the only way that you could is if someone props the door open, which will have people that are hopefully responsible more than a child, that'll make sure that that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Would you have people on site, your own
Yes.
employees, your own staff members that would ensure that that doesn't take place?
Exactly. Whenever there's a venue. It's probably noteworthy and it's a good opportunity. The building will actually be made out of concrete. We're going to use an insulated concrete form, so there'll be 8 inches of concrete all the way up to the eaves, and then the rest of it will be used timber frame construction on the roof. That may not mean much to most people, but it'll have the noise. I mean, it's be like a tomb, I guess you could refer to it.
How would you address additional litter from the site? That was another.
From the
that was
site?
brought up.
Basically policing the area the day after. We'll have our own garbage pickup. In fact, the biggest vehicle that'll ever pull in and out of there will be the garbage truck, which is the same size and very similar to the one that picks up our local garbage now. We just have to police the area, make sure that people don't leave their junk laying around.
Do you intend to operate 7 days a week? There were
No.
several comments about that.
No, 3 days. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's 30 weeks a year.
So 30 weeks a year.
$90.
Even in a leap
Yeah,
year?
even in
Thank
leap
you.
year.
So you
if-
intend on having 90 events a year?
Maximum.
So if the conditions were placed on there of just Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and, you know, for the 30 weeks, I guess, so I wrote it down, you wouldn't oppose those conditions?
No.
All right, unless I missed something else, because I took a lot of them as comments and I didn't take them as questions, but Mr. Robarczyk, did you have any other questions that you picked up on?
Comments about safety on County Trunk Highway I, and then the sound decibels, or
It's-
the comments that I heard.
Well, and where he's just up there to answer questions. People have the right to make comments. Did anybody else pick up on any questions that we missed? Mr. Chairman? Otherwise, Mr. Miller, then you could have a seat, and thank you for your patience, sir. You're next.
Michael Haran, W234S485 Milk Creek Trail. So I don't think I need to repeat all of the comments from my friends and neighbors. I agree with nearly every one of them, so no reason to repeat those. I want to bring up a different issue, an issue of ethics. I reached out to the State Ethics Commission earlier today to look into ethical standards for local public officials. And the number one item was public officials should not act officially in a manner in which he is privately interested. And I think Mr. Miller's position on the Planning Commission is an egregious violation of that ethical standard. The State Ethics Commission said that for local public officials, the complaints should be brought to the district attorney's office of the county. So I called the district attorney's office today, but it was late in the day and the person I needed to talk to wasn't available. So she is going to call me back tomorrow, and I do intend to pursue that issue. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Jill Owens Neal. And don't everybody cringe and hate me. My address is a Milwaukee address. It's 11039 West Daphne Street, Milwaukee. I'm the previous owner of the property in question that Mr. Miller has purchased for me. And I really would like to just address the board and everyone in this room who has concerns that I did not take selling the property lightly. The property's been in my family for 80 or 90 years. I am 52 years old, and that's the only place I've really ever known. When my grandfather purchased the property, it was to be a farm. That's what he wanted to do. My family has struggled a lot throughout those 80 or 90 years to keep the property in as attacked as it is, to keep it as a farm, to keep it with the natural creek, all of the animals that live there. That's always been very important. We have struggled. My mom went without food. My grandfather went and worked in a factory to be able to keep the land that he loved. My mother said if she ever had to leave that place, that it would kill her. Like I said, she sacrificed a lot, kept her house at 65 degrees in the wintertime and sat and watched TV with the lights off so that she would make sure she had enough money to pay the mortgage and to pay the property taxes. So when I was forced to make a decision in the best interest of my family, it was the most difficult decision of my life to have to sell a farm, and I'm sorry, I probably will cry, to sell a farm that my family sacrificed so much for so many years to keep. So when I sold the property to Ken Miller, I had lots of offers, but I chose him because he understood, first of all, the turmoil that I was being put through to make this decision to sell it. Ken understood that, and he made a point to make sure that the property would be used in some form or fashion to honor what my family, all of those years, have had to do to keep that place. Now, I understand everybody, and I know I'm supposed to talk to them, but I'm sorry. I understand everybody's concerns about traffic.
Ma'am, you do need to address the board, though.
Traffic and noise and how it would affect their water. But we had those same concerns when Mill Creek subdivision came right to the west of us. And the reason why people have that conservancy land is because when my grandfather purchased that, it was originally 80 acres. And so he allowed, when those subdivisions were to be built, for 30 acres of his marshland to be part of that conservancy. So we've talked a lot about conservancy and keeping things as natural as part of it as we could. Well, you have a conservancy because we did that. We gave you that land to keep that. Like I said, we had concerns when the subdivisions went up. We had the same concerns. We're going to be able to go outside. We can hear children playing. We can hear music on people's decks. We can hear when they're shooting fireworks during, holidays. But we embraced it. It wasn't easy, and we learned to live with it. So I appreciate your time. To everybody that's here, I understand your concerns, but I really feel that this unique event venue that Ken is proposing to make, and to be keeping the 100-year-old farmhouse in place, and to be making some really great things out of something that was tragic and devastating for me to have to do, I really greatly appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you. Evening.
Nicholas Rodig, West 234, South 4825. I have a few questions, and I also would like to paint.
What was the road?
Mill Creek Trail, sorry.
Thank you.
I have a few questions, and I'd also like to paint just a little bit of a picture from my family's perspective. I'm here representing my wife and my son, Matthew. So question number one is, there's an outdoor amphitheater. What is it going to be used for, and how many people does it seat? My second question is, and some of these things may already kind of be addressed through some of the new information that came up, but in the plan that was put forward by the Millers, and I don't know the Millers, and I'm sure they're really nice people, so this is nothing against them. In the plan, it specifically stated that it listed all the things in the conditional use statement that Jamie was speaking to, but it said it was not limited to those. So I just want to make sure that if this is approved, the language is very specific as to what this event venue can be used for.
Could you clear? I'm not sure. Jamie, do you understand the question?
I'm not exactly sure which paragraph it was in, but it was in the actual proposal from the Millers.
I know what he.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing I'd just like to say, that the picture I'd like to paint is in their actual proposal. They said that it's to show off the peaceful serenity of the neighboring area. And I'm concerned with regards to that specific amphitheater because the direction it's facing. And I know Mr. Miller has spoke about the fact he lives across the street as well. And the time frame in which this venue is being operated is the fact that it's facing to the northwest. And while bass sound is unidirectional and goes all directions, I'm concerned also about the treble and the midtones that are very specific in their direction that are going to head to the west, the northwest, and to the due north directions. And I just want to make sure that that's looked at as far as from a study standpoint. If there is going to be any kind of outdoor music or anything like that, it sounds like there isn't. That wasn't abundantly clear in the proposal that was put forward. So basically the picture I'd like to paint is they state in their proposal for peaceful serenity and everything else. If it's going to be used for an outdoor venue, my little son, he's going down for a nap, going down for bed. He's got school the next day. There's noise outside, 200 people. They're drinking after the ceremony. It'll be nice and peaceful for a ceremony, but I'm concerned about what happens afterward and how that'll affect my family going forward. So I'd just like the board to take that into consideration and to ask the right questions and put in place the proper language so that in the future this can't turn into something beyond what the original intent is. Should the Millers sell it, someone else buys it, whatever it might be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Mykick, South 51, West 23108, Partridge Lane. Our house directly in our backyard, you can see the farmhouse, the Miller's property. And we just learned about this whole development, maybe like a lot of our neighbors, very recently. And it surprised us because over the last year, we've been in the process of working with an architect to improve our home, all of which was on the back side of our home for the privacy we currently enjoy, facing due north. So now we've put our plans on hold. We've spent thousands of dollars with the architect, and that's not something we plan on doing now if this goes forward, because why would we invest more in our property if everything that we are planning to do for our privacy was now going to be affected by looking at this commercial complex, not to mention the noise. I used to be in the sound business. There's no way you can keep music at 75 decibels unless you don't even use a microphone. And maybe they're just going to use acoustic guitars, but that's not going to happen. So a lot of our neighbors have improved their homes on Partridge Lane over the last couple of years. Property values have been going up because people keep making improvements to their homes. I don't see how any of our neighbors are going to continue wanting to improve their property, knowing that the property values are actually going to go down with this proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Rich Moore, South 50 West 23420 Woodchuck. I'm here as a representative of the Mill Creek Estates Homeowners Association. I'm a board member for the group, current president, and I can tell you that the 44 households in the subdivision do not want any commercial enterprise that's going to bring more traffic, noise, or liquor to a residential area. So we oppose the project. The building is nice looking, but there will be traffic. There will be alcohol on a narrow road late at night, and there will be a litter. That's because the wind is going to carry it. So the Homeowners Association, 44 residents, are strongly opposed to this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Michael Horan again. I have a follow-up question about the number of people. I want to make sure I understand this. So the restrictions on the event venues places the limit at 300, and Lilac Farms or Mr. Miller's company says 200, but that's his decision. There is nothing to stop him from increasing it to 300 and still complying with the rules. I just want to verify that.
My name is Vanessa Mulqueen. I live at West 227, South 4655 Patricia Lane, which is just off of Lonsdale and Weber Drive. I would like to also say that I am against this commercial development coming into our residential rural neighborhoods. It's not why I moved into this community 3 years ago. I enjoy it very much. I enjoy the peace and quiet. I don't see that continuing. I have the same safety concerns, water concerns, the concerns with driving, the concerns with noise pollution that many of my neighbors have already voiced. I wanted to ask you if this property can be changed to a unspecified conditional use to allow a commercial development of this kind. And I don't see how a parking lot and a commercial enterprise, a banquet hall with a bar is an appropriate use in a residential neighborhood. You've placed these restrictions on an unspecified conditional use permit or whatever approval you would call it. What prevents you from then deciding to eventually remove some of these restrictions or change them to allow additional development or additional liquor service at other times? I also wanted to mention that even if the venue is only open Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, those are my times when I am home enjoying my yard, being outside. And the last thing that I want to do is hear the music and hear the noise of the traffic or be faced with the congestion of the traffic when I try and make my way around my neighborhood and enjoy, my time, my free time. And then I also wanted to ask what experience Mr. Miller and his family do have in running a commercial enterprise of this type. I'm not familiar with any of his other businesses, so I would be curious to know what background he and his family have in making this type of a business a success, and what happens with the property and this change to unspecified conditional use or commercial use of the property if his venture fails. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Phillips. I live at South 49, 23310 Mill Creek Trail, which is about 500 feet from the western boundary of the second lot on the drawing that's been presented here, not the one where the event would be, but the other one that's part of the existing property. I say that because my first question deals with that. I was wondering what plans or limitations, if any, have been defined or suggested for that land. Secondly, I just want to state, I am a new resident here. My wife and I bought our house about 4 months ago in Mill Creek. And I can tell you my goal was not to live next to a wedding venue. We also just got married. So we kind of know what how those wedding venues are used and what goes on there and the particular furor that's used or that you see when these new barn venues come up. They're pretty popular right now. But what I want to say just at the end is that we just bought our house. If this building and business existed in its form, I'm honestly not sure if we would have made that purchase. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name's Roger Dunbar. My address is South 47 West 22715 Lonsdale Road. I probably live about a half a mile from where this is going to go in. I couldn't agree more with one of the other gentlemen. I find it highly unethical that a person on the planning commission can do this. I would also like to know who gets the vote on this. Do us as citizens get the vote on this, or is it up to the planning commission in the board here? Because I will hold my representatives accountable at the voting ballot. My big concern is, I agree with what everybody has said. My big concern is if this turns into a slippery slope. If for now it's this, then what? They just ripped down that schoolhouse on the corner of Milky Way and Lonsdale. What's going to go in there? Somebody has a business idea for that. I'm against this. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
My name is John Lang. I live at S49W23290 Mill Creek Trail. And again, I agree with everybody who has already spoken. But I'm going to come from a different angle. I'm a police officer, got over 30 years of experience, and officers cringe when things like this come up because they know it's going to be an increase in OWIs, drug overdoses, accidents, from property accidents, personal injury to fatalities. All those risks are much higher. Disorderly conducts go higher. Underage drinking, drug overdoses, which are already on the rise. Right now, coming off that property, we don't have any of those. But I can promise you, this venue goes up, we will have those, and I don't want them in our neighborhood.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is William Glazer, and I live at West 235, South 4965 Eagle Court. And I'm here representing my wife, and I also have a son and a daughter. My son's in first grade, my daughter's in kindergarten. We were fortunate enough to get a house in Mill Creek back in 2012. And a lot of people here have mentioned some good points, and I want to bring up something that really hasn't been brought up yet. And that's the cost. So when I moved in here, the taxes were what I thought were very reasonable. And I'm very happy to say that in the last few years, they've actually come down. But when something like this comes in, I start to question the potential costs and don't know how it's going to be spread around. And by costs, I mean things like right now we have a sheriff's deputy that we contract. I believe it's 24 hours. So are we going to have to add additional hours, additional nights? Also, potentially, are they going to need to direct traffic? I know the church across the street at 164, the big church there, they direct traffic. They probably have private. But again, I don't know if that would be the sheriff or private or if that would be required for when the venue lets out and all those cars come out. And even things like lawsuits. Again, the last gentleman that was just up here said that there's potential exposure. And that is a concern to me because I don't know how the town is prepared to defend themselves, not only against some kind of personal injury, but even if it's a resident, one of these fine people are here today, maybe they have lost their property value and they file a lawsuit and it's still a matter of the town defending itself. And so as a resident, I just want to make sure that you guys are at least thinking of that and have that in mind because legal costs can spiral out of control. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we take a little break and start answering some more questions before they pile up too deep. The first one I had was amphitheater, what the use is and how many seats there will be.
There's three different options of place four, actually, if you call on-site, three on-site options for the actual marriage, of which the amphitheater is one of them. The other one would be in a pole barn that's presently there that'll be resited and allow for about 110 people to use that if the weather, if it's raining or whatever. But the amphitheater specifically will hold about 120 people. It has where the minister would stand would be a rough timber frame pergola that'll be up there. The seating will be permanent. There'll be no microphones or I guess whatever you call it, audio. It'll be strictly if the guy can't talk loud enough, they're not going to hear him.
there's no microphones at the amphitheater.
Correct.
And what about music? Wedding
It would,
music,
the most would
coming down
be,
the aisle?
yeah, the most would be probably a violin and a bass. No piped in type of music.
Okay. And again, no outdoor music whatsoever. That was the next comment that was.
Correct.
Okay.
Next question was for the planner more than for Mr. Miller. And I believe, Mr. Babarczyk, the gentleman's referring to when you read the original definition, it said including but not limited to, or some language similar to that. And then, but the actual use, then people come in and petition for a specific use, and the conditional use spells out the uses that the property can be used for. You want to expand upon that, please?
That is correct. So in the conditional use, we would want to expand upon the definition of event venue, which we had defined as part of our criteria. Also, there was a question with regard to how many people can actually be, how many guests can be on this site. Yes, the criteria identified 300. Mr. Miller is only proposing 200. So one of the conditions of approval is limiting him only to 200. If he would ever want to increase to the 300, he would have to come back in, request an amendment to the conditional use. And at that time, we would hold a new public hearing with regard to that matter. So as the condition of the staff report, it would be limiting him to 200 guests.
Okay, and you use the word expand. I think you mean you clarify, you narrow the uses. The general is what was approved. And when someone applies, you narrow those uses and clarify exactly the uses.
Correct.
So the gentleman's correct. The original document says that these are examples of what might be allowed at an event venue. I don't know if you can pull that language up, but when someone petitions, they petition for very specific uses. The Plan Commission and the board decides that those uses are appropriate, and they're not given, they can't go to 300 without coming back if they only ask for 200, and they can't expand the uses without coming back. It specifically says what the uses are, what the number is, and that they have to come back for a new public hearing if they want to change that.
And that is correct. And it's my understanding that Miller's asking for all of the uses that we've identified. So he's asking.
Who, Jamie, does the conditional use go with? Is it part of the venue, or is it the petitioner that holds the conditional use?
Conditional use runs with the property, but the way that we write our standard conditions is it runs with the property and it runs with the owner as well. So in this case, we have identified Mr. Miller. So if Mr. Miller were to sell the operation to someone else, we would ask them to come in and amend the conditional use to reflect the new owner.
Next question I had was number of people. It's already been answered. The next one was what prevents modifications, if approved, to the approval. And that's, I mean, anybody can petition, but there's no guarantee, and they could come back. It would be subject to the public hearing and coming back if there would be a change requested. What experience do the Millers have in this sort of business?
In the business of the venue, or business in building, or both?
I think they meant in this type of business.
I personally have none. My daughter, Sarah, worked at Western Lakes for 10 years, of which she ran the actual banquet hall for 8 years. Is that true, or 9? 8 or 9 years. She was actually the general manager of the banquet hall.
I think the next one is more for Mr. Robarczyk, or I can answer. What if the venture fails? We've already indicated that it's Mr. Miller would be the name on the conditional use. If under the law, if the venture fails and the conditional use expires, they have to revert back to only the permitted uses of the property. So whatever the zoning is on the property, that's right in the code. We could find that section, I'm sure. But it says that upon termination or revocation of the conditional use permit, they can only use what the property's originally zoned for. That's, I believe, right in the zoning code. I hate to say that without pulling it up, but I know most zoning codes and that's in there. So that's a great question. If it fails, they can only use the building and the grounds for what's allowed unless somebody else petitioned and there was another public hearing. What, if any, plans do you have for the 30-acre parcel that adjoins the 20-acre parcel?
The remainder of all land, except for where the buildings are, will still be farmed.
So say that again on the 30
I said the remainder of all the land, not just the 30 acres. Because of the 20 acres that we're going to split off, there's only about 4 that's being utilized for this. And the balance of that, as well as the 30 acres that you're referring to, will stay as farming. It's been farmed for, I think Jill said 80 years, many, many decades.
Next question I have is who makes the decision? The decision is made by on recommendation of the Plan Commission to the town board, and the town board makes the decision as to whether to issue the conditional use. Am I correct, Mr. Robarczyk? Did I state that correctly?
That is correct.
Can I ask a question on that, though? If the Plan Commission says no, that this is not moving forward, can the town board override that, or does that condition stay?
I'd have to check your code, but it's my understanding you're a recommending body to the town board.
Because I thought we dealt with that at a previous meeting.
But was that the issue of whether or not to determine if it's we'll look that up for you. I'm not going to guess on that one. Unless Mr. Robarczyk knows off the top of his head.
While you're doing that, there was a comment about deputies and sheriff's coverage in the town of Waukesha. The town of Waukesha does contract with the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department. We have a 5-2-4-2 schedule. That means they're on 5 days, off 2, on 4, off 2. That's the sheriff's deputies. Each one of the deputies has that schedule. That means that we have the same deputy in the town for that shift when they're here. When they're not on that shift, the sheriff's department still is in the town of Waukesha. They are tasked with patrolling the town as well as any other Waukesha County municipality 24/7. So they are still here. We just have an assigned deputy for a shift in the town of Waukesha.
I'll come back to it. We can do it all over. Number of people. Slippery slope. There was a question about, or a comment about the slippery slope. I don't know if it was then what? I guess that makes it a question. Again, there can't be a slippery slope without another public hearing and another petition. It'll be the conditional use is written very specifically. That's the only way it can be written, setting forth how the business can be operated. It can't be a slippery slope. I mean, could they come back and ask for a bar? I suppose it wouldn't meet the definition. Probably require a rezoning and a master plan amendment to make it a bar. And then cost, additional hours. Oh, directing traffic was the last one. Will you be required to have people there to direct traffic at either at the beginning or the end of an event? I believe was the question.
Are we going to be required? I believe not. The good news is that not everyone shows up at the same time, and certainly not everyone leaves at the same time. So there won't be just this influx or drop out of the building, all at the same time. Most people leave over a period of hours. There was another inference, I think would be a good word, and you might want to address this as well as me with the ethics of this whole thing. And I think that we all agree that from the get-go, I did ask to be held to the same standard as anybody else. Certainly not a higher standard and certainly not a lower standard. And I can say that with all the meetings that we've been to, I feel obviously we've done what we needed to do.
Well, it wasn't really a question. The gentleman said he's going to go research it with the district attorney, and he certainly has the right to do so. But people need to be reminded, just because they're elected to office, they don't lose their property rights. They don't lose their citizenship rights. They have to be very careful that they don't violate the ethics. The gentleman's correct. Mr. Miller has stepped down from all of the decisions and all of the dealings with this. So I know of no ethics violation, but I didn't think it was a question, Mr. Miller. That's why I wasn't going to respond to it. You have researched what you have to do. in order to, submit a petition. And I believe you followed those procedures. I mean, there are many people that sit on board or are elected who own businesses in town or do projects in the town. There's no law against doing that, but I'm not going to stop the gentleman. I hope he can check with the district attorney, but I think if she calls me, she's going to find out that Mr. Miller followed all of the proper procedures. He is not required to step down from the plan commission in order to be, first he's appointed, he's not elected, so that makes some difference, but he's not required to step down from the plan commission just to be a petitioner to do business in this community. So, I mean, that's the general answer to the question, But again, the gentleman's going to check it out. That's why I wasn't going to comment on it. So that's all I had. I'd ask Mr. Robarczyk if I missed anything.
Those are all the comments I had on my list, or questions on my list.
Anybody else have any of that?
Right after cost to the town, there was a question about liability to the town.
Well, the answer to that, I guess that's a legal question, so I have to answer that. Anybody can sue anybody, but I mean, we have other places that have traffic. We have other places that have alcohol. We have other places that have special events. And sure, if the town does something that raises liability, they can get sued. But I just because somebody opens a business does not automatically create liability. That's the only way I can answer the question. I mean, every other business, the same issues could be raised about safety and traffic and things like that. Now, so that's the best I can answer it. They asked you to think about that, and that's why I don't know that's why I didn't write it down as a question. It was more of a statement. Have you thought about this, and should you think about this, and please take this into consideration, the potentiality, of increased services and potential liability.
Thank you. I would suppose we could move on while council is looking up the question that Jim Radke had regarding plan commission. Yes. You could, why don't you sit back down and we can continue with questions. Anybody?
Sure. Eric Regenfelder again. I have a question about the lighting at the site. What type of lighting will be there? The hours of operation of that lighting and signage. What type of signage will there be? And how, if it's a lighted sign, what would the hours of operation of that be?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. John Einberger, South 49 West 23400 Woodchuck Lane. And before I begin, I want to say, if I ever get arrested and go to prison, I now know what it feels like to be in front of a parole board. But anyhow, I don't have any real questions. I just have concerns. No, I don't want this there. The other day we had 3 deer eating in our backyard. An event like this right up to the Conservancy, I believe, will affect the wildlife. I am concerned with drunk drivers, impaired drivers. I'm very concerned with it in this area. I'm not convinced the road can handle that. I also, if all of the music is kept inside, and then you have this 2,000 square foot patio that people are carrying their drinks out, 20 people at the end of the evening drinking will get louder and louder. And you can't, you're going to put the patio out there for them to go out there. You can't keep them in. And that is not music. That's just irritating voices going on until, I don't know if it's 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock. A lot of different numbers are floating around, and I don't know which one will be approved. There was something else. But anyhow, I don't think we should have it. I'm concerned about the noise that can't be controlled. I'm concerned about the light that can't be controlled. And I'm concerned about the effect that it's going to have on the wildlife. Mr. Miller he has the right to do on his property the same as I have on mine. He has the right to enjoy his property the same way I do mine. So these become at cross purposes. Who is going to win? Because somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. There's been a lot of blanket comments made. There's the document that's been up there that has property values probably going up. And now I hear from Mr. Miller that he has no idea how they would go up. There's the number of events and how often it's going to last. In here, it says it's going to be open 12 months, but may be closed on January, February, and March, unless the business gets better, and it should be open. So we have, on one hand, this story, on another hand, that story. I'm a retired CFO of healthcare organizations from out of the state. If somebody brought this to me as a proposal, I would turn them right around, walk them out, and say, get your act together. Tell me what it's going to be. I can't say, this is what you wrote, this is what you tell me, this is what we think. I don't know. And as long as I don't know, the answer is no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Sandy Hom, West 230, South 3827, Milky Way Road. Gosh, what a stranger I feel like. I was actually at home watching this on YouTube, as I usually do, and figured I better come in. Ken Miller is a friend, lives just down the road from me, and I like him a lot. But I have some concerns about the project. And I think every one of you knows where I stand, and you know what the right thing to do is for the town. I'm not sure you'll do it, but I know that you know. I was watching for a long time on the YouTube, and then I came in. I'm not sure if I heard anyone mention the issue. I heard a lot of stuff about traffic on I at Guthrie and at Big Bend. I didn't hear anybody mention traffic on Milky Way. And I would expect that a lot of people coming to this venue might come down Les Paul Parkway and come down Milky Way Road and leave the same way. And I've been there for close to 30 years prior to when I was a youngster, and now it's 50 years. Well, 66, but anyway, I've literally seen deaths on the hill at the Butler farm where people try and catch air, where people have been drunk. We've been out on the road on Milky Way pulling people from cars. So I just was curious that no one was mentioning that access. I mean, that road is used now as a thoroughfare for everybody south of Lonsdale that lives down where all these people are here for. So, I figure it'll be more traffic on Milky Way too. Of course, you all know that I had a long time experience here with another project in the town that's just quite a bit closer to my house. And as one of the other speakers mentioned, I think it was Ken, in the end, the taxes, even if the taxes on this piece of property go up, the amount to the town is almost negligible. I mean, people don't realize that when they see the pie chart, it's all schools, and then the town gets this tiny little bit. So this can't possibly, be a cash positive situation for the town. Someone mentioned slippery slope, and I think it's been defended to some extent, but I watched the slippery slope with the project by my house, and the slope lasted for many years, and the plan of operation changed time after time after time, and the town followed all of its rules, and that didn't change them from voting to change the rules for the plan of operation to whatever the applicant wanted. And I would expect the same thing to happen here. So you don't have to call it a slippery slope, but the applicant for the conditional use changes what they want to do. They come in, public hearing, whatever the process is, gets approved, and now it's more cars or it's more hours or whatever it is. So I see that happening. I find it interesting that this group is here in such numbers, and that it's such a different group than was here several years ago. So it's kind of a when it's in my backyard kind of thing where people come out. And the other thing that I just wanted to end with was it was one of the last meetings I was at, where I was videotaping, but people talking about land going into conservancy or being set aside, or it will never change. It's, we're going to take this 80 acres and we're going to put houses on 25 of it, and we're going to set the rest aside, and it'll never change. And I mean, of course it'll change. I mean, the land that you're looking at now is zoned residential. It's changing. So it's just silly to think that it wouldn't. And so Ken says that the land, the remaining of the land will remain as farmland. Well, it will for some short period of time, whether that period of time is a year or 10 years, but whether it's Ken or someone else, they're going to come along and want to develop the land. I mean, the land that I'm talking about near me was farmland, and now it's a park. They call it a park. So, I think that you guys are heavily in favor of what you consider growth, and you'll vote in favor of the proposal. And you know that I'm not. I hope you do the right thing. I'll wait and see. Thank you very much for your time.
Evening.
Scott Abrahamson, I was up here before. Just wanted to say a couple other things. In light of the fact that we started talking about the business aspect of this property, we all know what developers do. They build properties, they build structures, businesses, apartments, whatever it might be. And down the road, they sell them. In this case, this isn't just an apartment, this is a business. If this business fails and we're now stuck with a building that's worthless, the attorney there just said it reverts back to the other use. Well, what good is that going to be when you've got this structure sitting on it? There seems to be no experience here with the business. Chances are it could fail. Then he's going to be selling the property, probably at his loss, unfortunately. But what happens if it's a tremendous success? Now he may sell it for tremendous profit, and the next guy comes to this board and says, hey, I need to expand onto that property now that's just a little bit towards our subdivision, which is still owned by the same lady who spoke before. So that being said, knowing what's going on and what could happen, not a good idea. We've got residential zone property. We've got residences in the area, and the highest and best use of that property is residential. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an appraiser. I've been doing it for 28 years. The first thing you learn about property and how its value is affected is increase in traffic, negative impact. Noise, negative impact. Commercial, negative impact. If that's what the town thinks it should be, I don't know what you're thinking. Now, I know personally several people on this board. I'm not going to say who, but I would hope that they would do the right thing for the town, because the town is a town, not a city. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Kurt Bushman, live at West 230 South 4353 Milky Way Road. Just a couple things, a vote of confidence for Ken Miller. He's a leader of the industry in water conservancy, and there were a lot of concerns here about the water usage on the property. His buildings that he builds are over and above industry standards by a long ways. His developments are quality construction. So everybody that says that there are concerns about water conservancy and that type of thing, that will not be an issue. The farms around Waukesha County are disappearing, the farmland. You know, if this deal didn't go through, somebody's going to buy a piece of land and put 25 houses there. You're going to have 5 times the water usage. You're going to have more groundwater going into, or polluted groundwater going into the ground. And I just want to say a vote of confidence with Ken Miller. I've had business dealings with him for 25 years, and he's a man of his word, does what he says, and he will complete and run the property successfully.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gary Scalf. I live at South 51 W23150 Partridge Lane. My backyard actually borders the Mill Creek Conservancy to the south, so I directly face the proposed development. I guess in general, speaking about what everybody has already gave their observations on was, there's an ordinance that talks about public nuisances affecting peace and safety. And that would seem to be the underlying justification for not moving forward with this project. I'm sure Mr. Miller is a very reputable builder and does things very ethically. Unfortunately, when you're trying to put a commercial enterprise in a residential area, it just creates a lot of things that you just can't control, regardless of how much you try to commit to them. Biggest one I see is the noise abatement issue. You can say you have an 80 decibel limit, but at what point do you react to that? How do you say you have 200 revelers there for a wedding reception? Do you get above that level? Do you have to shut down the music? Do you ask people to come back inside from the deck? And being right across from there, what is my recourse when that abatement is violated? Call the sheriff, call Mr. Miller. So I'm a little confused on how that all gets governed. And again, I strongly oppose this whole enterprise going in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Kevin Johnson, W227, S is in Sam, 4604 Patricia Lane. We're about 1,000 feet from the venue right across where the Milky Way School was. Heard a lot of people against this operation. I'm not in favor of it because of the tranquility we have out there. My wife and I both discussed, man, it's really nice and quiet out here. But I've seen Mr. Miller developing houses around there. Everything he seems to be top notch. If the board and the planning commission feel compelled to award Mr. Miller these conditional use against what all the people here this evening have been talking about, I would just like to say that I think you need to put some very strict guidelines on it. Mr. Miller, a question was asked to him by one, I believe it was Mr. Merrick, about a passing lane. That should be put in place if in fact you do approve this. That County Trunk I is without a doubt very, very dangerous. Every time I come out of Weber Drive and I accelerate west on I, there always seems to be somebody that came over the hill and they're right on the back of my car. And with cars slowing down to turn into that place, you're probably going to have an accident. The other thing, the original barn was raised about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. I'd just like to know how much bigger this new structure is compared to the old one. Because I've been to these venues before, weddings and barns. It's the original barn. It's kind of quaint, very nice. But I think driving down I, and that looks like it's much larger than what the original was. And also, it was mentioned before, what's to keep this from expanding in the future? More operating days, more buildings, bigger parking lots. And we do have, with the Buddha temple down the street, they have a lot of cars there on a Sunday afternoon, but it's not music and people partying. On the decks outside, the noise was a big concern. Sometimes the people outside, even if the doors are closed and the music is at a 75 decibel limit, the people outside can be much louder than the band inside, especially if they had a few too many to drink. One question I had, I don't know where this flyer came from. I received it like 2 days ago. And it said in here that the Planning Commission changed the town zoning laws to allow Mr. Miller to develop this. I looked on the previous tax bill and it was zoned agriculture. So up until this year, I don't know, or I should say up until this year, it was agriculture. I don't know what it is now. So if that question could be answered. And in regards to the sheriff's department, what days do they actually patrol? I know you gave us a schedule, but that didn't really tell me. I don't know if it actually is a rotating schedule for days in the town, or are they here on weekends? If you could expand on that, please. And I think that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Why don't we take a break and start answering some questions? The first one that I have.
Questions.
Hi, Al Collins again. I'll be real fast. We have to make a decision. And 99% of the people in this room feel a certain way. We live in a democracy. Decisions are made in a democracy for the common good. We cannot ask the majority to sacrifice their home investments, their quality of life, and their safety for one party or one person. That defies logic. And as the Rolling Stones song tells us, you can't always get what you want.
Thank you. The first question I had was lighting. Lighting and the hours of lighting. So what type of lighting will you have on the exterior of the building and the hours that those will be lit?
The hours would only be during the operation. Whenever there's a venue there, they'd be on. Probably be a safety light that'll be left on in non-hours of operation, just so the sheriff's department can see in and out of the place. The lighting will be a down lighting in the parking area, LED type lighting. I don't know how to describe it other than the fact that it's not an upward globe. We're trying to prevent from the, what's it called, lightscape changing. So it'll just be down lights.
How many lights will there be?
In the parking lot, probably 4.
Okay.
All we're after is the safety. We're not there to light up the area.
What about signage? The question was what type of signage will there be and if it will be lighted and what hours it would be lighted.
I'm not sure if we can have more than a 2 by 3 foot sign. Is that? I think that's the guidelines. I'm not sure.
I would have to look at the zoning code to see. Let me see if we can pull it up.
Lighted only during operation, if it's lighted at all.
With regard to the lighting and the signage and that's all going to be reviewed and approved as part of the site plan of operation, not the conditional use. So what Mr. Miller is giving you right now, he has not provided us with the lighting plan, the photometric plan, or renderings of the signage and that. So that's why we haven't included it as part of the conditional uses, because it'll be reviewed as part of the site plan of operation.
The next question I had was hours of operation, that there was some question as to the hours of operation, and I think that's been asked and answered, but go ahead if you would again, hours and days of operation.
I think it referred to Saturday and Friday and Saturday from 10 to midnight. I think, whatever the guidelines were, I don't want to go from memory and misquote, and Sunday was an hour less. I think Sunday was from 10 to 11 PM.
And again, 90 events
90.
per year.
Yep.
Can we get that from the planner, what the hours of operation were listed as, Jamie?
Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to midnight, and Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m.
And specifically, that's different than what's listed now because of the adjustment that's been made for Friday, Saturday, Sunday only, isn't that right?
That is a few of the points that I had identified, so it'll be up to the Plan Commission and the board if they want to change those based on the public comments that we have received tonight.
Okay.
What's in your staff report is what was asked as part of their original business plan.
The next question was if the decibels exceeded the limitation of 75 decibels at the lot line, what is the petitioner's recourse? And maybe I'll direct that to, or the resident's recourse, and perhaps I can direct that to council.
Yeah, generally when we have situations like this, the residents are told to notify the sheriff's department. It's not that the sheriff's department or the police department, it's not that the sheriff's department or police department will do anything but make a report at that time, possibly. I don't want to mislead anybody that they're going to drop everything and run over there and shut the place down, because they generally don't, but they make a report, and then monthly they make reports to the town board. If it reaches, the next step, if that isn't adequate, is we have people come to the town board meetings and under public comments, or ultimately they can make it. The next step is they can petition for revocation of the conditional use permit. We usually have an interim step though before they get to that. I'm just telling you how I practically, if there are complaints and the complaints aren't addressed in a way that the board is satisfied that the complaints are being addressed, then they usually set up a procedure where the residents can contact the petitioner directly. They're given a certain period of time, and the board monitors to make sure that the complaints are being adequately addressed. So we set up a procedure. We don't set up a procedure usually in advance. You can, where, they have to notify but we have situations with quarries where we set up the procedure at the time the conditional use of the quarry permit is issued, where they're gotten the name of the quarry operator, they notify the quarry operator has to resolve the situation and then report to the town board what he did with that complaint. That's a more formalized procedure. We don't generally set that up in advance. The only place I know that they set them up in advance is quarry, but that is a procedure that we have put in place. If there are complaints, the property owners aren't satisfied, the complaints are being addressed, before the revocation occurs, they set up a procedure of who I have some individuals like Mr. Miller who say, here's my number, here's my card. You got a complaint, call me 24 hours a day. I want to know about it. It's my business. So, I have operators who do that, at the time the conditional use is issued. They just give it out and say, here, you call me. If you get awakened, call me, wake me up, tell me about it. So I'm not telling Mr. Miller what to do, but I'm just saying that's, I deal with so many of these that I have a myriad of answers to that, what he might have thought was a simple question, or maybe even a rhetorical question. What am I supposed to do? But we do set up procedures to deal with the issues if there are issues and they're not being addressed.
Are you prepared to share your home phone number?
I would if I had one. I will definitely share my daughter's cell phone number.
The next question, I think, was a passing lane. You had said that there was an XL and decel lane on the north side.
On the south
on the south side, sorry.
Right.
On the north side of the road, would you
There's
be willing to put in a passing lane?
willing or require, the county's not requiring it.
The county's
I'm not
not
sure it's
requiring it.
logical or illogical or, I personally was in favor of the decel and XL because that's the best place so you can slow down to get in and accelerate to get out. I think the precedent was set, and that's what they referred to actually, when the Buddhist temple resurfaced their driveway. They don't have the bump out on the south side. I'm not going to state that I'm willing to at this point. I have no idea what it even costs, but
Fair enough.
You have to understand, you could require it, the county could say no. It's their road. They could say.
as of now, they've said no. It wasn't that I asked them. They just told us what they're going to require.
The next
We've been to the county. Amy, we've actually talked to her. Either I or our engineer has talked to the people at the county numerous times, not just about the road, but the other issues too.
The next question was about a barn that was recently raised and its size of the original barn versus your new structure.
Yeah, the original barn was completely shambles. It had to be taken down. There was no way to we would have loved to saved it and used that and not added onto it. I believe it was 34 by 46. This building is 40 by 80. The additional space is mostly in the kitchen area and the bathroom area.
And then there was a question about expansion and how do we handle expansion? I think that's been asked and answered several times, and that would be through another public hearing and an amendment to the conditional use.
For the size of the sign, it can be a maximum of 8 feet in height, 64 square feet in size, and 10 feet off of the property line.
Thank you. Next question I had was regards to the flyer that was put out and says that the Plan Commission changes zoning laws, and I'll let Jamie answer that, please.
That's a good question. Attorney Macy and I had discussed the citizen letter. We're not quite sure what it is in reference to. The property has been zoned R1. I'm assuming that the taxes are probably ag use taxes. So that's why the assessment shows agricultural, but the property has been zoned R1. We have not changed the zoning on the property. It was the Town Plan Commission and Board that made the determination to allow it as an unspecified conditional use. So we've been following our zoning ordinances. We haven't changed anything to date.
Thank you.
I want to clarify because you keep saying allow. They're only allowed to petition and ask for it. There's no guarantee that anyone would be given an event venue. And
Fair enough.
we just have to be very clear that no one leaves here thinking that all it was done is anybody in the town can come. In rare instances, there are certain uses that are not in a zoning code. And there's a paragraph, and you referenced it, and I have to answer your question, I have to come back to it anyway. And I'll tell you one that's been it was never in zoning codes for years and years and years, in-law units. And the first in-law units that anybody tried to do, they did under this exact same procedure. They did it on an unspecified conditional use. And for some like 10 years, the county only allowed in-law units, which many of you may be familiar with. It's very common now, but 30 years ago, nobody heard of an in-law unit or building an in-law unit on their home. And they were all done by unspecified conditional uses by someone coming in, just like Mr. Miller, and saying, it's not in your code. Can I at least have the right to apply for it and ask for it under an unspecified conditional use? Eventually, the code will be written, as will the county code and all the codes, because these are so popular, they're going to be written as conditional uses in everybody's code, just like now if you look up in-law unit, you find in-law unit in codes. There are, I'm not pro or con these, there's three or four of them in the town of Oconomowoc right now, and I'm sure that the planners at the county are starting. And so that's why this plan commission, this board made it very specific. They wrote it as if it would become a conditional use later. Here's the guidelines and the parameters that they would consider it under. Eventually, I'm willing to bet when they do the next rewrite of the zoning code, it'll be a conditional use in the zoning code, just like in-law units. Believe it or not, lawn maintenance companies, landscapers, was never in the zoning code. they were always unspecified conditional uses throughout the state until new zoning codes were written. So we don't want to mislead anybody. There was no change in the zoning. All that was done was any one of you can apply for an event venue on 20 acres. If you meet all of the minimum requirements, you can now apply because they determined it wasn't in the code. It's a use that people want to at least consider doing, and they authorized the applications to be filed. But there's no guarantee that anyone would get it. Mr. Miller was told that he was given was the right to apply for it. I want to make sure that's very clear. There was no change in the zoning. This is a very typical procedure when new uses like event venues, wedding venues come into vogue. You have to try to deal with them, and this is how most communities deal with them.
Supervisor Fisher?
Yeah, may I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? I guess perhaps even Planner Barczyk or Attorney Macy might want to respond to it, but where I'm a little bit struggling, and I was kind of saving this question, we kind of wandered into that, but when the Town Planning Commission and the Town Board looked at this as a concept back in December as an unspecified conditional use, my takeaway from that, and perhaps it was different than others, we were couching that in terms of a wedding event venue. That was basically the focus of the discussion. And without getting too far astream on that, my at least perception of that would be for a limited number of times during the year, much limited in frequency for wedding event venue, and led to believe it was appropriate to create an unspecified conditional use for that purpose. And what I'm hearing different tonight, I'm going to put this into question for a minute, but we're talking about fundraisers, and we're talking about birthday parties, and I don't know whether these are conventions and family reunions and all these kinds of things. We're talking about 90 events a year or whatever. I mean, at what point in time is this, at what point in time, how is this different than a hall for rent or a place that's doing conventions or that type of thing? That's what's troubling to me. Does we say where it might go, does the county has jurisdictional authority over any rezoning? And I know this is couched not in the terms of rezoning, but at what point in time, in terms of a slippery slope, does this become something really quite different than a wedding event venue? That's, I guess, what frankly I'm finding quite troubling.
Is there a question in there?
Yeah. I didn't get it if there was, sorry.
Well, all right, I'll try it again. That was inartfully said. At what point in time, if this is, and I appreciate what the petitioner is asking for, but we're basically asking for 7 days a week usage. I mean, I certainly see, unless there's some restriction on it, and I mean, I hope if somebody does this, this is a viable business enterprise. Could this be 150, 200 days out of the year use? And then I don't see how this is and I guess I'll put the word in there, limited, but how this is an event venue. I don't see how that would be much different than a lot of other places that basically hold wedding receptions, parties, fundraisers, whatever kind of gathering for people. That's the thing, I guess, the frequency that I'm having trouble with. So my question is, I guess, how far can we go with this? Well, here's the question. Hang on. Don't shake your head. How far can we go on this as an unspecified conditional use when it could be used 100, 150, 200 times a year? I don't think that's a unspecified conditional use for a wedding venue. That's my question.
Let's let the petitioner answer. How many times a year are you going to have an event at your facility?
3 times 30, 90.
Okay, so not 150, not 200.
Okay. Well, let me answer your question as best I finally got a handle on it. We analyze the code as a staff to find out whether if someone walked in and said, I want to have a wedding venue, if that was his original request, is there some place in the zoning code that dealt with that concept only? You all made the decision. There's nothing in your code that would allow just a wedding venue, because every one of those other establishments that holds weddings we know of none in the code that are that would be allowed that aren't full-time restaurants. You wanted to distinguish between a full-time restaurant that allowed weddings in the back room versus a location event venue. It was on the staff's recommendation, after analyzing all of the ones that we've seen approved by the county, that to just write it for weddings is foolish, because every one of them has birthday parties or other types of events. So we were trying to put you into the most current vogue, that to call it a wedding venue is a misnomer, because none of them have just weddings. They don't, and I'm not saying the Miller, when it's my understanding, when Mr. Miller came in, he asked for a wedding venue.
That's
We
correct.
we didn't have wedding venues. And when you decided to make it unspecified, you said, well, let's be practical, but this is not a full-time restaurant. It's very clear. He cannot have a full-time restaurant. He cannot have a full-time bar. This is a location you go to for, now it's 90 events. Now your question is, what would keep it from being 365 days a year? Nothing. Unspecified conditional use has nothing to do about terms or lengths. Trust me, if grandma's living in the in-law unit, she's living there 365, 24/7. I mean, has unspecified conditional use should not give you the concept that it's just a temporary or occasional use. That is not what that concept of unspecified means. It's nowhere else in the code. Okay? So there are locations, I am willing to bet there are locations in this town that if someone came in and asked for an event venue, you wouldn't have a problem with it being 365, 7 days a week. And I'll tell you where Walmart was. If they wanted to come in and apply for an event venue there, I'm not sure anyone would have a problem with 365, 7, you know, if that's an event venue.
I'm not sure that's an apt analogy, but thank you.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying there are locations someone could apply, so it's written to, you have to decide what's reasonable, if anything, in this specific location. That's what a conditional use is all about. It's so unique that it's not by right, it's only permitted with your permission, and you have to decide what are the conditions that would make it doable in this location. And if you can't put reasonable enough conditions on to make it doable, then you have to deny it. You've been asked to answer your question. To make for an unspecified conditional use determination, required action by the Plan Commission and the Town Board. For conditional use, conditional uses and their accessory uses are considered as special uses requiring review, public hearing, recommendation by the Plan Commission, and approval by the Town Board. So they're totally different provisions, two different codes. The one that allowed for the potentiality of applying required both Plan Commission and Town Board. And on the conditional use, it's recommendation by the Plan Commission and approval by the Town Board. That was your question. That's right in the code, section 13-2-9.
So if the Plan Commission does not approve it, the town board can't approve it.
No, the Town Board, Plan Commission makes a recommendation. They can recommend approval with conditions, denial for reasons, or take no position.
Okay.
And the board then takes that into consideration when making their decision.
Very good. Thank you.
And that's as it relates to conditional use.
Are we done with me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we were discussing, I'm trying to recall the topic that Supervisor Radke is thinking of, because it was a question in my mind at the time also. Do you recall the specific? It was not a conditional use. So in that application, it was such that it had to be approved by both the town board and,
Yeah.
excuse me, the planning commission and the town board?
The determination of an unspecified conditional use, the determination that someone can apply for an event venue required both determination, it says, in the judgment of the Plan Commission and Town Board. So that's the example he was referring to. To create the potentiality of applying for an unspecified conditional use, it needs both the Plan Commission and the Town Board approval. In order to issue the conditional use, it needs a recommendation from the Plan Commission. And if the Plan Commission doesn't act within a reasonable time, the Town Board has to take it up. Then it goes to the Town Board without recommendation.
The last question I had was regarding the sheriff's department and what hours they're here on contract patrolling the town of Waukesha? And the answer is, we don't know. And for obvious reasons, the sheriff doesn't tell us when he's here and when he's not here. We don't want to know that
Well,
information.
But per our contract, they follow a specified schedule.
They do, but we don't know what days they're
So
actually here.
The specified schedule is they're here 4 days, and then they're off 2 days, and then they're here 5 days, and then they're off 2 days, and then they're here 4 days, and then they're off 2 days, and then they're here 5 days.
You can stop now.
But
I'm
I'm
sorry.
glad to hear
So the
this-
moral of the story is out of 13 days, they're here 9.
But I'm glad the town chairman knew that we're not supposed to announce when they're on duty or not on duty, so that everyone, I'm sure you're all glad that you didn't announce this. So we know.
Let's open up to more questions.
Ed Paget, South 57, West 22641, Woodside Court. We don't live in the area, but we moved to Wisconsin in 1972, and we're astounded to find that you people have bars in the middle of nowhere where you have to drive to them and drive home. And that's my objection. A fully licensed bar, 4.1 on page 5, and 4.2 says Lilac Farm intends on having an operational bar with a liquor license. I don't think that should be allowed ever. And I watch the people run the stop sign at Guthrie and Lonsdale when they're probably sober. And these people aren't going to be. And I think it's just going to be too dangerous. And I understand that people like to party, but they don't have designated drivers. I can pretty much guarantee that. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Bentley. I live at West 230, South 4512 Milky Way Road. My husband and I bought that property at the top of the hill last April and have built a nice home on the land. We liked it a lot because we've been in Waukesha, the town of Waukesha, for more than 20 years. We moved out here from Franklin and lived in the more city-ish part of the town. Then we moved to the other side of Waukesha and then put our house up so we could build this house about a quarter of a mile away from the other one. So we really like the area. We really like the wildlife and everything else that's in the area, and I think that this might upset that as well. I agree with everybody else's comments about the light, the traffic, and everything else. I do have a couple of questions, though. As far as changing the road, who pays for that? Would that be Mr. Miller, or is that something that the taxpayers pay for, or the county? And oh, I just wanted to bring up that that's the only kind of, if he would be approved to have this here, it's the only kind of thing that's stuck in the middle of a whole bunch of houses. I mean, we have 2 churches, we have the Buddhist temple, and we have Fox River Christian Church, but that's not till midnight on the weekends. And, you know, I agree with one of the other people said too, that those weekend hours are the times that we are there with our families, and we want to enjoy our home in our area and our neighborhood and our yards, and that's going to be, it could potentially be disturbing. I think it's a beautiful proposal. I read the thing and I really like the idea, but I just don't want it in my neighborhood.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Klein, South 39 West 22284 Tim Drive. I'm here speaking on behalf of my wife, Erin, as well as my father and mother-in-law, Paul and Eileen Trimborn. We would just like the board to know that there are many people here who are actually in support of the project. We believe that we represent the silent majority, and we believe this will be an asset to the community for reasons that I think they've already outlined. I won't waste your time in going over those again, but I hope you vote in the best interest of the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Amy Moore. I live at South 50 West 23420 Woodchuck Lane. secretary of the Mill Creek Homeowners Association. I have some concerns that haven't been addressed. I'm wondering if the barn is going to be air conditioned. And I'm wondering if the barn doors will be open and that's how people will get out onto that 2,000 square foot deck. Because if that's the case, and I also wonder where is that band going to be located and how are the speakers going to be oriented in the barn? Will they be going towards the barn doors so that that music is going to carry out, or will they be oriented so that they're back into the barn? The other question I had is, will smoking be allowed on that 2,000 square foot deck? And where will the cigarette butts end up? Will they end up in Mill Creek, thus harming our wildlife? I want to thank you for allowing the Buddhist temple to be erected. I think they're great neighbors. And the other thing I wanted to say is those 90 days of these events are the 90 days that I want to be on my new deck with my husband, the deck that we spent thousands of dollars on last summer. That's it. Thank you.
Frank Schmer, South 48 West 23395 Merlin Lane. 2 years ago, my supervisor came to my door and shook my hand and said, I want your vote because I'm going to have your best interest forward among anything else. So now you heard the residents. You're going to hear me say, I don't want this to move forward. I'm going to look at my supervisor and said, now prove that you have my best interest in front of anything else. And that goes out to the other supervisors as well. Not very scientific. 3 yeses, anywhere between 20 and another 44 no's. Common sense. Do we really even have to go any further than this? You heard the concerns. You heard the disapprovals. Again, not very scientific, but the majority of us do not want this to move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Tom Bentley. I live on West 230 South 4512. Where the new construction was at the top of the hill there. And my wife just spoke, and I have to reiterate what she said, but I have a lot of concerns about this, about noise pollution, light pollution, 90 days a year, primarily going to be in the summer and the spring. You know, we used to live on Partridge. We moved out to Waukesha years ago, absolutely fell in love with the area. When we were looking for a new place to build a house, we picked that lot in particular. It was very close to our other house because the area was fantastic. Semi-rural, very, very, very nice, very laid back. It's a beautiful place to live. As soon as we get the house built, we find out that somebody wants to put whatever you want to call it, at the bottom of the hill. And 90 days a year, are you kidding me? We're going to be listening to music 90 days a year. We're going to be having lights and drunks. If you're going to have alcohol permits, you're going to have drinking. If you're going to have drinking, you're going to have drunks. You have basically 2 feeder roads, Lonsdale, which is 2 lanes in each direction, and Milky Way, which is in sorry need of repair, to get in and out, potentially dozens, potentially hundreds of cars. If this business goes as planned, what business doesn't try to grow or expand? So is this going to expand to more than 90 days a year? Is it going to expand to a bigger facility? Is it going to expand to more parking, more lights, more music, more everything else? That's not why we bought the house. That's not why we built the house there. We built the house because of the type of environment that we live here in the town of Waukesha. We didn't build the house to be next to a place that's going to be a ruckus 90 days a year. Probably the 90 days I want to be sitting out in my yard. So I venomously oppose this thing from the get-go, from the moment I heard about it. So I'd very much like to suggest that you vote against this thing. Thank you.
I'm Vanessa Mulqueen. I spoke earlier.
Yep.
I wanted to ask all of you what you've heard from a lot of people now. What is the next step in this process? When is the next meeting? When are the next approvals? What comes after today? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Jessica Toth, T-O-T-H, South 46 West 22655 Weber Court. The camps are my neighbors, and I am new to the area. I grew up in McWanago, loved Waukesha as a kid, moved to Muskego, lived there 15 years, loved the town too. So I want to love the town of Waukesha just as much. And being new to the neighborhood, like a lot of people said before, I want to sit outside on my deck, be able to have a beer with my husband, and not have to worry about more traffic on I, which is just awful to begin with. Is there a chance we could talk about reducing the speed on I? That's my question. Can we put flashing stop signs on Big Bad Road and Guthrie? What else? Reducing the end time, the Millers, instead of doing midnight. I'm also a newlywed. People start drinking early. Maybe reduce the time to maybe end at 11 p.m. instead of midnight. Contact Trimborn Farms in Glendale. It's also a barn, and it's right in the middle of a residential area. Maybe contact them, see what they do for sound decibels, parking, lighting, that type of stuff. I also recommend doing a shuttle service, and also promote Uber and Lyft highly, because I'm sure you're going to have a shuttle service to and from a hotel. And if we're a resident and this goes through, can we get a discount for renting your venue? It's an honest question, just asking. Thank you for your time. And I want to go home. I'm hungry, so let's end.
Thank you. Let's take a minute and answer some questions. The first one I had is, who pays for the road improvements, specifically the acceleration, deceleration lane, and perhaps the passing lane? And that would be the developer. The town does not participate in that whatsoever. For Mr. Miller, will the barn be air conditioned? Can you come on up to the microphone again? Huh? Microphone, please.
Yes. Yes.
That's an affirmative. All right. The next one was barn doors. Will they be open out to the deck?
No. Other than obviously passage.
When people are coming in and out.
Right, right.
So they won't be propped open.
No. We're paying for the air conditioning. Remember that.
The next question was the band. Where specifically within the building will the band be located? And where will the speakers be located or oriented in such a fashion to keep the noise inside the building or pushing it out?
Well, no, it's obviously for inside. I can't tell you exactly where they've been located at this point. I don't think we have any idea, do we? We're getting the cart in front of the horse here a little bit.
Okay.
Somewhat. I mean, but 90% aren't even bands. They're disc jockeys. Not that that's going to matter any, but, and the speakers will be permanent. They're not going to be brought in and out by the different disc jockeys and or bands.
Okay. Next question I had was smoking. Will smoking be allowed either on the premises, on the deck?
On the premises, but I doubt on the deck. We're hoping they go out the front where there's concrete.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I can't.
What about inside
I hear
the building?
people saying hoping, and what are the words you want me to use? I mean, at this point, we haven't gotten that far. I think it's unreasonable. Not unreasonable, but I mean, I think it's reasonable to not have every decision have to be made. I mean, even the point of operation was put in ahead of time before it was actually necessary to be put in. What was your next question? I'm sorry.
Will it be allowed inside the building?
No.
Okay. The next question I had, I think we'll direct to Planner Ray Barczyk. What are the next steps from here?
Is that it for me?
For Planner? No. Nope.
Oh, sorry.
The next steps would be based on the Plan Commission and the board tonight, whether they choose to take action on it for or against it, or table it for more information or additional conditions to be added. So it could move forward tonight as a conditional use. But then there's all of the conditions that the petitioner is going to have to comply with. So there's going to be follow-up meetings for approval of the certified survey map. There will be follow-up meetings for approval of the site plan of operation. At that time, we will likely see all of the materials from Waukesha County that they're going to have to provide, and that's all going to be based on the developer's time frame as to when he can get all that information together. Attorney Macy?
The first question that the Plan Commission and Board will be asked to make is whether or not they have enough information to make a decision or whether they're going to continue the public hearing to another meeting. You have to make your decision based on the information you hear at the public hearing and the applications that have been submitted in the planner's report. So if you have questions or you need additional information, you have to adjourn the public hearing to a time and date certain. That's the first question. You do not close the public hearing until you have all your questions answered and all the information that you need to make a decision. So after you close the public hearing or adjourn, if you adjourn the public hearing, nothing further will happen tonight. It will just be put over to the next meeting. If you close the public hearing, the next question you'll be asked by staff is whether you're ready to make a decision tonight or whether you're ready to give guidance to the staff to come back with a detailed conditional use permit or to come back with a detailed motion for denial, both which need to be written out in detail. And lost my train for a second. And we ask you to sort of go down the table and decide whether which of those I know what I was going to say, or you could tell us to write them both. You could say, we don't know, but write a draft conditional use permit and draft a conditional or motion to deny with the reasons for it. Your past practice is to have for at least discussion purposes, but the potentiality of approval of the conditional use permit, the staff report does have a draft potential conditional use, just something for thought. And you could still say, well, this framework's good, but we want more based on the comments. We want a condition on this. We want a condition on that. And you could still direct that they come back with staff comes back at the next meeting with a more detailed. Or as Mr. Barshik said, you can vote tonight. If you're going to vote to deny, we would stay here and write up all the reasons for denial, because the code says you can deny it, of course, as long as the action is not discriminatory or unreasonable. So in order to make sure it stands up in court, the denial, I have to work with you to write the conditions of denial. And if it's an approval, then we work with you for the conditions of approval.
Thank you.
That's the detailed procedure. First question is whether you got enough information. You haven't begun to ask your questions yet, and we haven't even finished with the public. So I anticipate we're going to be here for a while yet, gathering the rest of the information.
The next question I had is, can we reduce the speed on County I? And the answer is this board cannot, because it's a county road. That would have to be something that is done by the county. Next question was stop signs on Big Bend and Guthrie. Again, County I is a county road. That would be something the county would have to install flashing lights. And on Guthrie and I, both of those are county roads. So again, that's a county issue, and it wouldn't be something that the town of Waukesha could do. The next question for Mr. Miller is, could you have a shuttle service?
Yes, we actually intended to.
Okay. Next question for Mr. Miller was, will you provide a discount for town residents?
Just for that woman in particular.
What's that? They asked if we could reduce it. Okay.
Because surely anything to the town board would be inappropriate.
Exactly. I agree.
And the next question was reduction of hours. Would you consider reduction of hours? Right now you're from 10 a.m. Obviously the 10 a.m. to, some period is preparation time.
Are we talking about from the beginning or the end? I think the beginning, obviously, it could be reduced. I think that was arbitrary.
From midnight to 11 was the question that was asked.
No.
But the board has the power to do that. The board has to decide what are reasonable conditions to make the use work in this area. And they don't have to have the same hours for every conditional use that they would approve for event venues, because every area is different. So they have to decide what are reasonable conditions to make this work if they feel it can work. That's right in the code.
That's all I had for you, Mr. Miller. We can continue on with questions or comments or criticisms.
Rosemary Steffen, South 51 West 23108 Partridge Lane. As I was standing there ready to come up to talk, I'm surprised as to the lack of business plan that Mr. Miller has. He has some business plan, but there's a lot of unknowns. And you're making a decision, it's like buyer beware. And once he gets in there, He can do what he wants, and we know that. My question is, if this is approved, when is Mr. Miller's grand opening party? The date, he must have that in his business plan. And we all have a ability to say no by our vote. And if Mr. Miller, if this goes through, we are voting, we have the option. Not a lot of families do. They have children in school. We have an option, and we will move. We will put our home up for sale. So I would really like to know, Mr. Miller, when your grand opening, and if you approve this, we will move. And we had plans to add an extra 200,000 onto our home, and I have blueprints with me. That's done. So I really hope you think about it. If this was in your backyard, what would you do? Thank you.
Thank you. Evening.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Blank. I live at West 229 South 3876 Milky Way Road. I can't say at this point whether I am for or against Mr. Miller's proposal, as I just learned about it approximately an hour ago from a concerned neighbor. But I do definitely have some concerns, and I do definitely have some questions that I would like to share with you for your consideration. I'm primarily concerned about noise pollution and traffic. Living right on Milky Way, I can say without a doubt that the road cannot support the traffic that it already has. First of all, cars go way over the speed limit. It's 35. Nobody drives 35 on Milky Way. Someone else just brought up the question of, could the speed possibly be reduced on Lonsdale? I've brought this up a couple times over the years, even before some of you were on this board. Is there any possibility of reducing the speed on Milky Way should this proposal go through? Because it's kind of, the speed limit's 35, people go 45. So maybe we need to, dial it back 10. If it's 25, maybe people will actually go 35. So people drive way too fast. If you're familiar with Milky Way, it's barely 2 lanes. Doesn't have a center line, doesn't have shoulder lines, doesn't have a shoulder. In winter, we're not talking about winter use, but it's very dangerous in winter. So I'm also concerned about the extra wear and tear on Milky Way. Milky Way has its own unique set of problems, which I know most of you are familiar with, and has been repaved many times over the years because of the water situation in that area. So I would be concerned about the extra traffic on Milky Way and the need for possibly having to repave the road more often because of the increased traffic. On the north end of Milky Way, it's very difficult to get out on Milky Way onto Sunset. Many of these folks here, I'm sure, are very familiar with this. Trying to get out is very difficult. Chairman Merrick, I contacted you and a couple other supervisors asking for the painted stripes that were in the road to be replaced. When those were put in a couple years ago, I was the one who asked for that. And when the construction recently was done on Sunset, those stripes that were there to allow for the exit from Milky Way to the north, got demolished because there's new cement in there. They were never replaced. The do not block signs are not where they used to be. And I was told that, that was not a concern of the town. That was a concern of the city. Because it's not town property, it's not town land, I understand that. But I would have hoped that the town would have worked with the city because it's a concern of town residents. So again, I'm concerned about the traffic primarily, the safety. Milky Way Road is a dangerous road because it's narrow, because people drive too fast, because there's not a shoulder. I'm concerned about the long-term impact of all of that traffic on the road and the safety to all of us that live here in that area. Also, I want to ask about what plans will be in place to make sure that all of the conditions that are in the conditional use permit will be closely monitored by all of you. Having gone through the conditional use permit process with Five Diamonds, there was a lot of discussion then. Before that permit was issued about the conditional use permit and the monitoring of all of those conditions. You know, they have many conditions. We're talking about a lot of conditions here. So my specific question is, who is going to oversee all of the specific conditions? I want to make sure there's specific mechanisms in place. For example, what I'm saying is, if the lights have to be off at 12, who is going to ensure that the lights are off at 12? Which one of you? How is that going to happen? It's not the job of the neighbors to make sure that the lights are off at 12. Who's going to do that? How is it reported? You know, what's that process? Make sure that that process is in place for all of those different conditions of the permit. So those are really my main concerns. My hope is that there's thorough discussion, and I've heard a lot of really good input from everybody here, and I hope you consider everybody's comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name's Ken Nowak. I was up earlier. I just have one more question regarding the smart growth plan that the town is supposed to follow. I just have a question on Chapter 5, the land use, on the standards, G, and it says it can be approved, but it has to be determined that the use is compatible with the adjacent residential use. And I'd like to get a definition from the attorney and also the city planner as to what is compatible with residential use. And I'd also like to know if the town is going to do any type of land assessment so they could know what the property values are, like independent. I'd like to see an independent land assessment done so we could keep track of the land values and see what the assessor would say. So that would be a question. Are they going to hire assessor independent to do a land survey on property values? Thank you.
Thanks.
Sandy Hom again. A couple other things. I did want to mention that not only am I being disparaging of Ken, but it's actually been the opposite. Everyone that has spoken about Ken Miller has been the opposite of disparaging, and I think that says a lot about him. I'm not trying to contradict anyone here, but I'm going to share with you my personal experience with the sheriffs. My understanding is, and I've called them, we've been robbed, is that they're in the town unless they're called somewhere else. And they consider that reasonable. And I'm not suggesting it isn't reasonable, but they're not always parked down at Five Diamonds. If they get a call to run down to Big Bend, they're down at Big Bend. And they'll get down over back to the town of Waukesha as soon as they can. It's my personal experience. And lastly, at the time Five Diamonds was in its early stages, and speaking in support of the Ball Diamond, the previous town chair asked me if I would rather have several dozen houses down there. And my immediate answer was absolutely yes. I would prefer houses. And all these many years later, my answer is the same. And town property values would be greater if that land was homes, and so would this land. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Be nice to think I'll be the last one, but I probably won't be. Tom Curtis, W230S4521 Milky Way Road. It's interesting. I've listened to an awful lot of people, friends of mine who their kids and my kids went to school together, my neighbors, certainly Ken Miller. And I came out here in 1985. So with a handful of people in this room, I'm probably one of the, not only am I the older personally, but I've been around the town for a long time. And it is remarkable to me how little the town has changed since 1985.
Certainly the ball diamond was a change, but sort of that's at the other end of the town and it's on a big highway. If I didn't know Ken Miller, I would be concerned. And the reason I would be concerned is because my house looks out directly at this proposed venue. But I do know Ken Miller, and I know what kind of a guy he is. And I know that he will, in fact, give someone his phone number 24/7 to call him up if there's an issue. But that isn't really my point. My point sort of follows what Sandy Hom just said, but in the reverse. I have been here a long time, and I've seen a lot of changes, including the young man and woman who said, we just built on Milky Way Road. Well, they built right across the street from me, and they built a beautiful house. I think it's fantastic. Looks very nice. But we have to consider what will happen. Ultimately, you're looking at 50 acres of farmland. I think some of the neighbors said, you know, I've walked there with my kids. I've had my neighbors' kids walk through there. Ultimately, there's going to be change. The question is, what do you want the change to look like? How are you going to control, as best you can, and I realize you have your hands tied in many ways, what the town is going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? As Sandy said, well, I'd rather have 24 houses. I personally would disagree with that. I wouldn't like to be looking out at 24 houses. I'd much rather look out at 50 acres of farmland. So we could look at this in a couple of ways, one of which is it might be noisy and there might be too much traffic, and I wouldn't argue either one of those points. But the other way you can look at it is here's a gentleman who was willing to put his money into a situation to preserve 50 acres of farmland in the town of Waukesha. In order to do that, there was a necessity, I think, to try and have some sort of an opportunity to perhaps be able to continue to do that by bringing some money in the process. But the town of Waukesha has been a fantastic place to live, raise my kids here. I've enjoyed it completely. And my final statement in that regard would be, how many people can come in here and say, my goal is to keep 50 acres of farmland in the town? Not many. As a number of people have already said, vacant land is waiting to be developed. Ken does not feel he wants to develop that. Not only do I look out at the 50 acres, but so does he and his daughter. And he has no desire to turn it into something other than farmland. So if you essentially reject his request, he might well say, okay, then I'll sell the farmland to a developer. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think you really need to focus on all the issues that have come up, certainly the noise, the pollution, absolutely the traffic, because the traffic is bad. But you can also focus on, that's 50 acres, a pretty big chunk. And we have a gentleman here, Ken, who's willing to preserve the 50 acres as farmland. And to me, that's worth a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? At this point, it's coming up on 9 o'clock. Let's take a 5-minute or so break.
We are number 2 on the agenda.